3 minutes after 10 is the time. A very good morning to you. What? Paradise City by Guns N' Roses. Right, I tell you what, you'd have to be very, very plugged into this programme if you know what on earth that's got to do with today's event. I can't even remember whether I've ever told you before why Paradise City by Guns N' Roses always comes into my head on A-level results day. I'll tell you, it's pretty obvious. The first A-level result I got was a very pleasant surprise. And I was at home on my own at the time. It was in the school holidays. It was at the end of my lower sixth. We all had to do one a year early at my school in religion or church history or both. and I got my result. I think I must have phoned up for it, phoned the school, got my result, got an A, which was as high as you could get in those days. Now there's all sorts of things you can above an A. You can have an an augmented A, a turbocharged A, an A boost. An A plus, an A. I know it's just an A. Can you get an A double star? Anyway. And I was so happy that I put on Paradise City by Guns N' Roses on full volume and ran around the house. Not the best story I've ever shared with you, not the worst, but just one of those things. Proust had Madeleines, didn't he? Proust had those little biscuits, those little chewy biscuits that used to take him straight back to his childhood at the very sniff of a Madeleine, and Marcel Proust was transported to his childhood. A-level day for me, it is, it's Guns N' Roses. And then the following year, when I got the rest of my results, I'd remember I was in a pub in Manchester. I was in a pub in Ardwick-le Street. Is it Ardwick-le Street, or is it just Ardwick? I was in a pub near the Eleanor Wilkinson High School in Ardwick, where I was rehearsing a play. And I remember ringing my mum from the pub to tell her my results. And that was quite a nice day as well, because I'd been expelled the previous March or April, and getting half decent A-level results would be part of the mission to restore some sort of credibility at home, or demonstrate some sort of gratitude for the education that my parents had paid for and that I had managed to sort of throw back in their face by getting myself slung out of school. And they were quite important, A-level results, because they determined where you went to university. I wanted to go at that point in my life to the London School of Economics, and the results I got, well, they didn't actually matter that much because I'd done an interview where they'd more or less offered me a place anyway. So unless I'd completely carked it, I think I probably would have been all right. I don't even remember whether it was a conditional offer. And I don't like the conversations. I don't like the Clarkson content. You know the Clarkson? Do you know what the Clarkson content is today? And Jeremy Clarkson tweets about how he didn't get any A-levels, and look at me now, I'm doing brilliantly. I'm sending this tweet from a spaceship, or an enormous yacht, or my massive mansion or something. And you sort of think, yeah, mate, that's not really helpful. For a start, you went to a school like mine, which means you're already among the most privileged people in the country, and you'll have come out of that school with contacts and confidence that, well, I'd like to say money can't buy, but absolutely money can buy them, because that is why parents send their children to schools like the ones we both went to. And then, of course, the luck that has played a part in his career, and the serendipity, and the idea that someone who is essentially an exception to most rules would turn around and say, you too could be like me if you got bad A-level results. But do you want to know something funny? Clarkson always gets a lot of attention today for that. I think he actually possibly does a version of the tweet every year anyway. But the best story in this sector is actually a bloke called Bethel. Now, you might be familiar with this fella, because he's the one who had the disappearing phone during the PPE inquiries. And he tweeted what is probably my favourite thing ever on A-level day. He is a hereditary peer. So he is, I think, the third Baron Bethel. And he attended Harrow School, which you'll be familiar with as well. And on the day of A-levels a few years ago, it was in 2020, I think, he tweeted, in order, and to be fair to the fella, he wanted, obviously, to encourage or comfort people who hadn't done very well. But he tweeted that third Baron Bethel, seeing the seat being kept warm for him at the time in the House of Lords, he tweeted, I fluffed my A-levels, taught me how to hustle. Who does he think he is? Arthur Daly taught me how to hustle. First to get a place in university, That was obviously a typo. I'm sure he knows how to spell university, but it was an unfortunate one. And haven't stopped ever since. Still hustling now, all the way to the House of Hustling in the House of Lords. Hustling on the hustler. He's a hustler. He's like Arthur Daly. He's hustling. What a prune, honestly. Because, of course, if you went to a school like Harrow and you are destined for a seat in the House of Lords, they're not getting very good A-levels. Even if it feels like the end of the world, it isn't. I found myself in the unlikely position of quoting Eminem the other day while talking to Polly Toynbee, the doyenne of Liberal columnists, and the guest on this week's, the guest on this week's Full Disclosure. And I found myself quoting Eminem because of One Shot, because of that track One Shot. And this is, I think, probably one of the best distillations of unacknowledged or unconscious privilege. When you don't know, it's not a big fancy woke word. It's just when you don't know how lucky you are. That's all. And a lot of people don't know how lucky they are. It is, the textbook example of being born 3-0 up and thinking you've scored a hat trick. When we do a phone-in about things that like private education, everyone says, I work very hard. And you sort of think, well, what on earth are you saying to some fellow who's just come in from a 14-hour shift on minimum wage? You're telling him he doesn't work hard, because sending his kid to a school like that is not even in his wildest dreams. But we don't know. None of us like to think we've had it easy, do we? None of us like to think we've had a leg up or anything. It's why Polly Toynbee's new book is actually so brilliant, and I cannot recommend it highly enough, because it's odd that people on the left of politics who admit the luck and privilege in their lives, and particularly in their livelihoods. It's odd how far up the nose of the Gammonati that can get. Actually, it's not the Gammonati, is it? It's the people who pretend to have the interests of the Gammonati at heart that get so upset by this. It's I can't. I mean, lefties. Why don't you give all your money away then? Why don't you have refugees living in your people who admit they're lucky, admit that the system has benefited them, are kryptonite to conservatives, certain types of conservative, because, the idea that the status quo is cripplingly unfair is something that they kind of like to keep under wraps. If things aren't going well for you, it's your fault. Things aren't working out. No, it's your fault, that is. You need to get a better job. You need to eat less and exercise more. You need to get on your bike, don't you? You need to move to a different town. You need to start using the value range in the local supermarket. You need to. It's all your fault. And society has not got any responsibilities to provide support or safety nets or help. And yet, of course, it's Lose Yourself, the track in which he raps One Shot. I recommend it heartily. I think you should get all your hip hop recommendations from 51-year-old white men. I think that's the way to go. So I'm looking at A-level results today, and I'm just thinking, I wonder how big a deal they are now. Is it exactly the same? Speaking more to parents, actually, when you did or didn't get your A-level results, because for my generation it was no guarantee at all that you'd go into the sixth form, that you do A-levels. Now you have to stay in full-time education, don't you, until you're 18, albeit you don't have to actually do A-levels. But the simple question really is, how big a deal was it? And I mean, my obsession with class. I think it's right to be obsessed with class. You cannot understand the United Kingdom unless you look at almost everything through the lens of class. But I do think that, to reference Eminem once again, I do wonder whether you kind of have more at stake on A-level. The less you've got, the more you have at stake on A-level day. That's when it's transformative, because it can be the difference between going to university and not going to university, or it can be the difference between going to the best university or not the best university. It's 12 minutes after 10. I'm going to pause now to bring you some very sad news. And it is news that the broadcaster Sir Michael Parkinson has died at the age of 88. Parkinson began on local newspapers in Yorkshire and rose to become one of the finest broadcasters, a master of the long-form interview, and actually an architect of the modern chat show. He also maintained a lifelong love of cricket and jazz music, and was broadcasting, I think, almost until the end. Bizarrely, I was reading I think it's The Guardian that does a My Sunday feature And I got sent a bunch of them last night because I'm doing it myself when the new book comes out. And I was just reading the Michael Parkinson one last night. And it was cricket and Yorkshire pudding. If you grew up in a family like mine, and my parents knew Michael Parkinson in Doncaster in the 70s. If you grew up in a family like ours in Yorkshire, Yorkshire pudding was a big part of your life. And he said it was the size of a cricket field. Every Sunday my mother would cook Yorkshire pudding. It was the size of a cricket field. Southerners don't know about that. When you do it in the baking tin, you don't have individual round Yorkshire puddings. You do it in the baking tray, the big flat wide one, and it comes out looking like a sort of, I don't know, a papier-mâché battlefield. But Michael Parkinson was, for any broadcaster working in this country, particularly one with a Yorkshire background, he was the Don. And hopefully he will be taking up a seat in the great pavilion in the sky as we speak. Astonishing to think of the kind of talent that appeared on that show back in the day. Muhammad Ali. I know you get big stars still on Graham Norton and Jonathan Ross and the other shows, but there was something about Parkinson, because he wasn't a comedian, of course. He was interested in what the guests had to say. It wasn't an entertainment programme, really. It was more of a, I don't know what you'd call it, Tommy Cooper. I mean, some of the moments that he created on television were absolutely superb. There was an authenticity to it, a sincerity to his inquiries. And if you are interested in interviews, I'll tell you what Parkinson did that even now a lot of people don't get. The second question he asked a guest often depended entirely on the answer that they'd given to the first question. Now, there are armies of researchers on shows like that, and he would have had questions prepared in advance, and he would have had lists of them in his dressing room before he went on air. Whether he used them or not, I don't know. Some do, some don't. He didn't have cards with him in the studio or anything like that. But if you watch him or listen to him, and there are clips galore on YouTube, he was inquiring and inquisitive. He was curious and charming, and that's why the conversations that he had with famous people, some of whom, I mean, there was a terrible one with Meg Ryan, wasn't there, once, but some of whom were immune, of course, to his charm. But that's why 99 times out of 100, Parkinson would get to places that no other interviewer could get to, and formed proper friendships, which is something that doesn't happen anymore either. Formed proper friendships with the subjects of his interviews. So that's very, very sad news. But 88 is, to coin a cricket cliche, 88's not a bad old innings, is it? And our thoughts are with his family, including his 3 sons, who he described in this article I was reading this last night as old men. He said they're old men now, but they still turn out for the third 11 every now and then. 10:16 is the time. I suppose we better return to the question of A-levels shortly and come up with an actual question. Do you know what? I think we tear it up, don't we, today? Let's talk. I think Parkinson's of a calibre to merit at least a proper conversation between you and me. It just reached the parts that other interviewers, other journalists could not reach, and we will mark his passing by talking about him, I think, and maybe move on to A-levels a little later. It is Thursday, of course, so Mystery Hour is also on the horizon. So, I mean, favourite moments is a fairly obvious question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. Favourite moments. Some are pretty obvious, but go on. Share that with us as well. Rod Hull and Emu, 0345 6060973. I think he would appreciate a more journalistic inquiry, actually. I think he would appreciate a question that perhaps isn't immediately obvious on a day like today. And that question is, why would a show, why is there not a show like that anymore? 0345 6060973. So there's no shortage of very, very famous people, is there? It sometimes seems, at this point, you insert the obligatory gag about not knowing who half the people on Strictly Come Dancing are. But there are still some superstars out there. There are still a lot of proper stars, Hollywood stars, sports stars. I don't know that he ever went in big on reality television stars. But you know, world-class celebrity is not exactly a dying breed. There are probably more world-class celebrities around now than at any other point in our shared existences, because there's so much more content being made. So why does a show like that? Why is there no show? Well, there certainly isn't in the UK. Maybe you'll tell me that there is in America. But it's all about sofas now, and it's all about quick turnaround and gags and features and and comedy gimmicks. The idea, and I like these shows. I don't want it to sound as if I'm criticising any of the presenters of what we would call a chat show today. But I always thought it would still work. You know, a really good interviewer and a really good guest. 2 chairs, 2 glasses of water, cameras, audience. Why do we think that doesn't happen today? Why does that format? Why is there no modern Parkinson? I just have a little think about it and then give me a ring and tell me. 0345 6060 973. And alongside that, we will run the question of why he was so good. And you can bring into that question, you can bring in your favourite memories and your favourite moments of the Parkinson show. I'm conscious of generation here. I'm conscious of people possibly... What age would you have to be to not really know who he was or is, to not appreciate his significance? Do you appreciate his significance? You're aware, but not as a viewer, just as a heritage, as a legacy of him being the kind of godfather of interviewers, the godfather of chat show hosts. So what was it about him that was so special? What made him so special? Hey, that might be the answer, of course, to the first question. Why isn't there a show like that around anymore? Answer, because no one else could do it. But what was it about him that made him so special? Made that programme one of those shows that you all sat down to watch? I'd like that. If you're my age, you're talking about Blankety Blank, possibly the 2 Ronnies, Parkinson, and not even Match of the Day, because, you know, not the whole family would enjoy watching that. But what did Parkinson have? What did Michael Parkinson have that... no, you're right, actually. It wasn't water when Dave Allen was on the programme, Tom. I think you got that absolutely right. What was it that Michael Parkinson had that other interviewers did not? And why would a programme where you get to eavesdrop on a conversation between 2 fascinating people, why does that format not have a place on modern TV? All right, hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973. And obviously, when you turn the show upside down like this and kick things off from a slightly different angle, it increases your chances of actually getting through, because I don't know why, but format jiggling confuses people and impacts on my switchboard. So you've got a better chance of getting through if you're thinking that this is something you'd like to talk about than you would on most other mornings. 0345 6060 973. Why do we not have shows like that anymore? And what was so special about him? David's in Chorley. David, what do you reckon?
I think it's the fact that we've got a plethora of choice of social media and Sky TV and everything. I'm a 62-year-old teenager, yes. But back in the day, Parkinson came on with a great quality act, and it was BBC One, BBC Two, or ITV. Full stop.
Yes, that's
and
true.
If you wanted to be entertained for a good hour, looking at one person talking to another, Parkinson would do it for you. Today's attention span of generations is just flippity gibbets. Just don't stay with something.
The podcast is a very popular format. The long form interview on podcasts, I do one myself, but there's quite a few of them around, and that seems to work. But there's a difference between television and audio, isn't there? Between visual and audio.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't possibly have done the Rod Hull and Emu one on the radio. You needed to see that to believe it.
That's very true.
You know, it was immersive for a different reason. But I do think that today we've got entertainment rich, quality poor. It's just. Were
you listening yesterday?
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't.
We invented a new word. We invented a new word yesterday. It's called my dayitis. And it's when you fall into the trap of thinking or saying out loud, "Oh, it was a lot better in my day." And you are currently showing some of the symptoms, David. You're showing some of the symptoms of my dayitis.
Nostalgia's not what it used to be.
And what was it about him then? Because in a way, maybe under your reading, maybe he wasn't that special. He was just in the right place at the right time.
He didn't have a plum in his mouth. He had a Yorkshire accent.
Did you think that mattered?
I think it did. I think it meant that the working man and woman could actually relate to him. He didn't use big words. He didn't come up with...
He did.
Well...
He did. He had a magnificent vocabulary.
Yeah, but he didn't. He
was sesquipedalian, David. All right, no, maybe he didn't show off. I'll give you that. You
just led me to that. He made sure it wasn't about him.
Yes.
he didn't want to make you laugh. He didn't want to make you cry. He didn't want to make you think. He wanted his guest to have that pleasure.
You're absolutely right, aren't you? It is. It is in that format. I mean,
Graham Norton wants to be funny. Graham Norton wants to be funny.
Well, he is funny. Let's not be miserable gits about it.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But I'm 62, so you've got to let me be miserable a little bit.
I suppose so. But I mean, in other formats, it could be about him. You know, if you're writing a newspaper column, it's very much your opinions and your thoughts. But in that format, on that show, you're absolutely right. His job was to make the guest as interesting as he possibly could, and he was an absolute master.
He was. Muhammad Ali was a moment in time as well.
Yeah, well, he came back again and again, didn't he? There was a proper chemistry there, a proper friendship, I think, and that's perfect. Something else that you don't get anymore. Lovely start, David. Thank you. And you can take a tablet for my day-itis. You just put it next to all the other ones in the bathroom cabinet. It's 26 minutes after 10, and picking up on David's theme, this text. Here, another Donny lass, Donny with a D, as in Doncaster. He made the show about them, whereas a lot of more recent interviewers make the show about themselves first. I also think there is something to be said for an honest, heartfelt Yorkshire lad. Speaking as a Donny lass myself, near Barnsley, wasn't it, Cudworth, where he grew up. And I hadn't thought of that accent angle. I'm not old enough, because I didn't know what was on telly in the 60s. Now, your kitchen sink, that's not the right word. Your angry young man kitchen sink movement was in the 60s, wasn't it? When people like Albert Finney or Peter O'Toole, actors who didn't sound as if they just stepped through I think John Osborne described it as actors who sounded as if they just stepped through the French doors with a tennis racket. You know, in the 50s, everybody sounded like that. Everybody on television would sound like this, and the pronouncers on the BBC would be absolutely word perfect. So if you turned on your television, you would hear somebody who sounded exceedingly well spoken, and that was positively de rigueur for decades. In the 60s, it began to change, as I understand it. I wasn't around when people like John Osborne wrote Look Back in Anger, and you had David Sillito, you had The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, you had Saturday Night, Sunday Morning. My accent went then. Saturday Night, Sunday Morning. And suddenly people from ordinary backgrounds were being portrayed on screen. I don't want to get too pompous or pretentious about this, but I wonder if Parkinson was the media equivalent of that. And an accent like his on primetime television was the journalistic equivalent of the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Club coming through on entertainment. I don't know, but I do know that he was obviously a legend, and I want you to tell me why he was such a legend and why we don't have shows like that anymore. Mitch is in Edinburgh. Mitch, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Mitch Ben, are you performing at the?
Yes.
Are you performing? Are you up there with a show?
Indeed, every day, 4 p.m. the Underbelly, Bristow Square. Thank you so much for asking.
You're very welcome.
Here's why we can't do Parkinson anymore. The celebrity industry is way too obsessed with brand management and image control to ever allow anything that freewheeling to happen.
Do you think?
You know, back in... what do you remember? The apotheosis of this was a clip that still does rounds every now and again. So about 2002, it's a show called Liquid News.
Yes.
It was on the very early days of BBC Three. In fact, it must still have been called BBC Choice. It's usually presented by the late Christopher Price, but on this occasion, Claudia Winkleman is sitting in for it.
Yeah.
And they've got S Club 7 on.
Right.
And she actually asks the unaskable question, is it true that Simon Fuller's made 40 million quid out of you and you're all on 200 quid a week?
Right.
Whereupon their PA literally storms onto the set and says, you were told you couldn't ask that.
I've never seen this. I've never seen it.
It's legendary. It's legendary.
How did I miss that? Do you know something really embarrassing?
And orders them out.
I was a showbiz journalist at the time. That shows how rubbish I was, doesn't it? I didn't have to...
Well, you have a look at it. But whereas back in the 70s, of course, they just turned Richard Harris loose in hospitality for 2 hours.
Yes.
You know, and then once he was sufficiently merry, they'd wheel him around for the cameras and he'd tell these incredible, outrageous anecdotes.
Yes.
They just never risk that now. You know, I mean, I think there are still...
Well, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. You're talking about a manufactured pop group versus a Hollywood Hellraiser. There's no way that...
I mean,
there's no way that Brian Cox is going to be turning up on a chat show with instructions on what he can and can't talk about. So I understand the point you're making, but there would still be enough guests to do a show like Parkinson.
One would hope. I think. Also, chat shows went through sort of a rather sort of nasty phase in kind of the 90s when it was all about trying to make the guests feel awkward.
Yes. So Clive Anderson sometimes did that, didn't he? With the Bee Gees famously stormed off.
Exactly. Well, there's something sort of slightly hypocritical about that, because it was also like, we're going to do a talk show and we're going to rack up a bunch of famous guests. You can see the fans together. But, oh, my God, doing a talk show is totally beneath us.
Yes.
So we'll sit them there and we'll make them look stupid. And it's like, yeah. And I'm not sure chat has ever really recovered from that as well. I mean, there's no doubt, you're absolutely right. Parkinson had this absolute incredible gift for putting people at their ease, and you're right, maybe the Northern thing was part of that. The fact that while he was an absolute consummate professional and he had an absolute polish to what he was doing, it didn't come across as a kind of a false polish. It didn't come across as a kind of a fake sheen to what he did.
And his laughter was very genuine as well, wasn't it? Which isn't always the case with the chat.
Yeah, I mean, everybody remembers that. He was partly the Billy Connolly becoming the legend that he was not just in how funny he was on Parkinson, but the fact that he absolutely cracked Parkinson up.
Yes, exactly.
Parkinson was completely unguarded in his response to that.
You remind us that it made careers. It didn't just reflect them. You didn't just get on there by dint of being huge. Someone like Billy Connolly became much huger as a consequence of being on Parkinson.
Oh, absolutely. It's pivotal moment in his career. I'm sure he would have no problem admitting that. I'm sure somebody's asking him that right now.
Whereas I get you.
Yeah, sorry, buddy.
That's all right, Mitch Benn. Where's the show again? Tell me again.
It is called Mitch Benn The Point. It's every day 4 p.m. Underbelly Bristol Square.
Fantastic. And break a leg. Mitch Benn there reflecting upon the passing of Sir Michael Parkinson, whose family has announced in the last hour that he has died at the age of 88. More of your thoughts and memories coming up after the very latest headlines with Thomas Watts. 10:36 is the time. I knew this, actually. I did know this, but I'd completely forgotten. But he did this slot on LBC. I couldn't have done it for how long did he? Well, at least you know what LBC's like. There'll be someone listening that's still got the tapes. When was it? Is it a bit unprofessional for me as an LBC presenter to ask you as an LBC listener when Michael Parkinson was on this station and what he was like? What was he like? Don't ring in and say, "Oh, he's much better than you, mate." Seriously, you could go home. Well, I had forgotten that. I knew that because, well, you know me. I used to boast about it. I'd say to people, "What are you doing these days?" And I'd say, "I'm working for LBC," and they'd look a bit blank, and I'd go, "Oh, I'm in Michael Parkinson's old slot," and then obviously they'd know what I was talking about. I'll tell you what, they don't go blank anymore. But the question of what was he like on LBC? 0345 606. Was it phone-ins? Did he do phone-ins, or was it more of a rolling news type situation? It was 97.3, wasn't it, when it was LBC News Talk? So what era would that be? Just to sort of around the turn of the 90s, possibly? I mean, he worked everywhere. Well, he was on Radio 2. He did Desert Island Discs. He was the first presenter of Desert Island Discs after Roy Plumley died, the guy who invented it. So similar skills, similar talent, I think, to the TV show. So there you go. You can have that. Stop sending me messages saying the song's called Lose Yourself, not One Shot. I know. I've said that. I knew that. I'm just referring to the lyric One Shot because that's what... A-levels anyway, we're not even talking about them anymore. We're talking about Michael Parkinson. 10:37 is the time. Why would a show like that? Why are there no shows like that anymore? What was so special about him? And now we add to that list, what was he like on LBC? And when was he? When was he sitting, metaphorically speaking, behind this very microphone? 0345 606 0973. John's in Broxbourne. John, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James.
Hello,
we share a common thread, actually. He worked for the LBC. He also worked for the Telegraph, where I used to work.
Gosh,
so I have a common thread with you as well.
Doing the cricket, was he at the Telegraph usually?
No, he did a column, all sports.
Okay.
It tended to be Barnsley, Yorkshire orientated and cricket orientated. But he loved this football as well.
Fantastic.
And so I was a junior, well, not a junior, football reporter on the Telegraph, and I had a bit of a telling off about something I'd done or not done. I can't remember now. So I was walking out the building at the old Canary Wharf with my toe between my legs. Right. Got into the lift, and Parky followed me into the lift. Yeah. So I thought, got an opportunity. So I introduced myself, and he said, "I know who you are. You're one of the foot soldiers." He said, "The most important cog of a newspaper."
That's nice.
And you can imagine how that lifted me.
Of course I can, yeah.
Yeah. His copy was beautiful to read, and I'm told by the subs an absolute joy to sub-edit because you didn't have to.
Well, I mean, he'd have learned that.
1,200. Yeah, if he was asked for 1,200 words, he wrote 1,201. It was like that.
Fantastic.
But he had this wonderful humility and respect, and dare I say, love for fellow journalists. So, yes, one of the great, if not the greatest, TV hosts.
But don't forget the newspapers.
One of the best.
Yeah, you're right. And he did the rounds. I forget what paper he was on when my dad knew him, but who, as you've just alluded to, was also on the Telegraph, as you know.
So when was your dad on the Telegraph?
He left in 1990.
So I joined in 87, so we overlapped by 3 years.
So you crossed a bit, but he was based in Birmingham, so you wouldn't...
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
It was when he got made redundant. It made the news at 10. That's how important newspaper redundancies were back then.
When I got made redundant, no one noticed.
That's how the world turns, John. That's how the world turns. I think they were filmed in the Cheshire Cheese actually that night. But you're right. Actually, he was a brilliant newspaper journalist. So I know he ended up on the Guardian, or the Manchester Guardian, as it would have been known then. And then he was on the Express. So actually, crikey, I've never noticed this before. I'm like a pound shop Michael Parkinson with a Daily Express, LBC. I even had a chat show once, but probably best not talk about that. Thank you, John. Patrick's in Shepherd's Bush. Patrick, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello.
I think, firstly, why not Parkinson now is because, short answer, in the digital age, it would be seen as too pedestrian and too tepid, really, too long form.
Yeah, I think you're right, by commissioners, but I wonder whether punters would actually agree with that if they were given, a taste of it. I wonder if they would.
Well, yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, things like the old Daily Mirror, if it actually had proper longer form articles, yes. Working class people used to read it avidly,
Yes.
But what I want to talk about, really, the two... I was a child when these happened, well, a teenager, but there were unforgettable moments that I've often talked about with people since. One was when Roger McGough was on,
yeah,
and the other was when Enoch Powell was on, and actually they both read poems.
On the TV show?
Yeah, Enoch Powell's was the most startling, because
Sure.
somehow, I mean, he must have prefigured it with Parky before they went on, but
right.
He got Enoch Powell to read this. It was a kind of classical sonnet-type poem that Enoch Powell said that he himself had written.
Right.
And it was about, it was a love poem, clearly. And
yes.
At the end, Enoch Powell was quite clearly sort of quite unsettled.
Yeah.
And Parky says to him, that was about a woman, was it, that you loved?
Yeah.
And Enoch Powell said quietly, yes, it was, back at university.
Gosh.
And then Parkinson asked him, suddenly, are you happy? And Enoch Powell, he would have been in his 60s, I guess, by now. It was the late 70s, I think. Enoch Powell said, I'm as happy as the human condition allows.
Right.
And the audience was totally rapt.
Yeah,
it was just utter silence, because here you had this really controversial Rivers of Blood politician.
This was post Rivers of Blood. This was post Rivers of Blood, was it?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Good grief. I'm surprised he was on at all.
Yeah, but I think it might even have been, when he joined the Ulster Unionist Party.
Yes, that's right, yes.
But it was this startling moment where this hidden chamber into his inner world
just got glimpsed, because he carried enormous survivor's guilt, pal, about the Second World War. Enormous survivor's guilt.
Oh, did he?
There's another famous interview that was on the radio, actually, where I think he was choking back tears when talking about how he felt about having survived while so many of his comrades died. But what a brilliant question. Such a simple question. Are you happy? What a great question.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it was like... It was one of those really sort of stops-you-cold moments.
Yes, of course it was. Proper shivers.
And the other one was Roger McGough in 1977. So really, unfortunately, at the height of the Troubles...
Yes.
Roger McGough, of course, he's still alive. He's one of the famous three Liverpool poets for younger people.
Yeah.
He read a poem called The Identification, which is about a dad identifying his son, his young son, who's unfortunately been killed in a bomb blast.
Yeah.
And anyway, they dimmed the lights. Roger McGough read it. And I remember then, at the end, Parkinson said nothing. There must have been 10, 15 seconds, which is quite a long time on TV.
It really is, yeah.
It was total silence, and you could tell again that the audience were all just totally rapt,
The silence. That is broadcasting. I don't know what the proper superlative is, but silence. If you know how to use silence, you are in the absolute Premier League of broadcasting.
I mean, it's a sign of just unimpeachable confidence.
It really is. It really is.
But
why are you so knowledgeable? Why have you got these memories at your fingertips, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I've always loved poetry, but I've also always been a bit of a kind of these moments. I work as a psychotherapist, so you're always looking for these moments that pierce people's unconscious.
Of course you are. And that's a really interesting perspective, Patrick, because it's quite postmodern, isn't it? The idea of a TV chat show actually, what did you just say, piercing people's consciousness.
Yes.
What a beautiful phrase, and that is such a compliment to what could be dismissed as a talk show.
Yeah, absolutely. But
it's more than that.
He was on that purposeful quest.
Yeah.
In a very genial, really warm way, to go deeper.
And that's why the words human condition just popped into my mind, for reasons other than the fact that they're the words that Enoch Powell used when Michael Parkinson asked him whether he was happy.
Yes.
It was about the human condition, that show, wasn't it, in a way? And watching incredibly famous and recognisable people distilled down to universal constituents. I mean, he made everybody one of us, in a way, by having that knack, that making everyone natural and relaxed. It becomes almost a democratising exercise.
Oh, yeah, totally, but it's that enormous interest in the essence of what makes people put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Patrick. I'm glad you were listening today. That was a really beautiful contribution, if you don't mind me saying so.
Really kind, thank you.
No, thank you. 10:45 is the time. It's 10:48. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, a slightly different programme, at least the first hour of the programme today, because shortly after we came on air, it was announced by his family that the broadcaster and journalist Sir Michael Parkinson had died at the age of 88, and such was his stature in the industry and in many of our lives that we're dedicating a significant chunk of the show today to memories of him and his work. And it's been particularly lovely, actually, not least because John, a newspaper man, knew him when he was a Telegraph columnist, and my late father, who was also a Telegraph journalist, coincidentally, knew him in South Yorkshire in the 1970s and 60s, when I think they were both on local papers. Dad was on the Doncaster Evening News. I don't know what paper Parkinson was on back then, but even then, to listen to Mum and Dad talk about him, I think he may have stepped out with one of Mum's friends, as they would have said in those days. But even then, there was a charisma to him. I think you'd know he was going places, would probably be the best way of putting it. 10:49 is the time. Nick's in Stockport. Nick, what made you pick up the phone? It's Nick there. Have we got Nick? Let's come back to Nick. Kate's in Camden. Kate, what would you like to say?
Good morning,
Hello,
James. I just want to thank you for honouring Parky's passing in this way. It's great, very sad news. I started working at the BBC when I would have been 17 or 18. I'm 17 now.
Gosh.
And a group of us, we were all about the same age and all started working around the same time. And it was just around the same time that Parky's show started to go out. And as BBC employees, we could go and flash our pass and get into any studio, where there was a live broadcast.
Just slide into the audience?
Yeah.
Lovely.
So we did every week.
Well, you'd see superstars, and when you're that age as well, you're very excited by Hollywood stars and the like being on stage.
He has such great guests.
Why was he so good?
I think you've already hit on a few other things. He was so down to earth, and what you saw was what you got. And he had a real genuine interest in his guests and in getting to know who they really were.
Yes, he did.
He had such a comfortable style of talking to them, rather than, I don't think interview is the right word.
No, it isn't. It isn't the right word. Or maybe it is actually the right word and conversation is the wrong word, because it wasn't. It was a matching of equals on one level, but on another level, as we've established, he didn't want to leave any of himself in the room except as the recipient, right. The man doing the laughing and asking the questions, but none of him being part of whatever got laid down.
Right. Because you say a matching of equals. I don't think Parky ever felt of it in that way, No,
he was there as a journalist.
He was always and he was always a little bit in awe of...
Yes, he was a fan.
Yeah, he was. And, the ones that I really loved, and he was on his show 15 times, was Billy Connolly.
Yes, of course.
And, he was so funny. And Parky, came close to wetting himself on a couple of occasions.
It's like the perfect straight man in a way, wasn't he, for Billy Connolly?
Yeah, it was very sad. They fell out for a few years because they became great friends. They did, yeah.
I didn't know that.
It was... and Parky revealed on the Piers Morgan, that show that he does, I can't remember what it's called, where he talks about
Kate Garraway does
lives
it now, Life Stories.
Yeah, she does, that's right, yeah. And he revealed, I think it was about 4 years ago, that they were friends again. And I hadn't known until then that they hadn't been.
Oh, that's lovely.
It was lovely. They fell out briefly, and he kind of hinted at the fact that he felt it wasn't Billy who shut him out for that short period of time, that it was more Pamela.
God, you're dropping. You're just giving us all the goss today. Okay, I don't remember that, but you've just reminded me that he could be a grumpy so-and-so. He once told me to F off, would you believe? I've just remembered that now. And I cannot say I blame him at all. So I was a very young gossip columnist, and one of the most terrible parts of that job was if someone came over from the features desk and said, we need some celebrities to comment on this story. So it would be a story about some nonsense, and you'd ring up celebrities and then they'd quote, you've seen it in newspapers, the reaction said last night. And I mean, I don't know how I had his phone number. I didn't have many phone numbers in those days, but I didn't often put my hand up. Certainly after this, I never put my hand up to do those sort of things. But so Gilly Cooper was wonderful. You could ring Gilly Cooper and she'd always help you out. And that's because she'd been a gossip columnist herself. But I rang Parkinson and asked him for his reaction to, and it must have been something truly ridiculous, like news that men were wearing high-heeled shoes or something. Do you know what I mean? That was actually a story, but my mate Henry wrote that one. So I phoned him up. I said, terribly sorry. And he just said, oh, F off, and put the phone down. Gave me a story in the pub that night, but as I say, I can hardly blame him. Kate, thank you. Nick's in Stockport, hopefully. Nick, what would you like to say?
Hello, yes, my dear old dad appeared on Parkinson.
Who was that?
Dick Emery.
No way.
I'm afraid so.
Oh, how lovely. And at this point, whenever you tell people who your dad was, somebody says, oh, you are awful, or
That's
something.
It.
Yes, thank you.
I thought I would be... very short, sore shoulder.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. Why do you think? What was your dad like on that show?
He was very relaxed.
Yes.
Actually. The one I've got a copy of is the one he did with Kirk Douglas.
Gosh, yes.
But it was a strange one, because normally they sat around, he sort of interviewed one person, then brought the next guest out and all the rest of it. Yeah. But on this one, he interviewed them separately.
Right. May have been a requirement by Kirk Douglas's people. That
yes, well, when I spoke to him very briefly, I met him last year, and he said that it was Douglas's people who had most probably put the kibosh.
What did he do when you saw it, especially knowing your dad? What was it that Parkinson could do that other interviewers couldn't do?
He could sort of prize bits out, which didn't normally, Dad was a fairly, he sort of hid behind his persona a lot, like a lot of comics, like Sellers and people like that. Yes. They tend to hide, but he did manage to sort of ask him questions about characters, and at the time, in 1980, there was a bit of a comment about some of his... about his gay character, and saying it was and there was a bit of he got Dad to ask Dad what he felt, and he said, look, I grew up learning my crafts, sitting in chorus boys,
of course,
and he said it was an incredible experience, and he said I had the greatest admiration for them, and he said nothing I do has got any
cruelty. There was no cruelty there, was there, at all?
Cruelty or, side to it.
No, there
at
wasn't.
All.
It was affectionate. It's another show, isn't it? I was talking a minute ago about the shows that the whole family would sit down and watch together. Your dad's work is absolutely...
Even the old man used to like to watch Parkinson a lot. So, it was sort of required viewing if you went round.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Thank you. Now, I just realised that you're Nick Emery, then, which I've no doubt has been commented on.
Named, yes.
Commented on a lot over the years as well,
Nick. A brother who was called Mick, and I don't know why.
And a Gilbert as well, I think, wasn't there?
Gilbert Richard, and sadly he's left us now.
Sorry to hear that.
Yes, he reached the dizzy age of 80.
Gosh, that's a lovely memory. Yes. Thank you, Nick. That's really, I'm glad so glad you were listening today. That's remarkable to think of watching your dad on a programme like that and seeing the interviewer reaching parts that other interviewers couldn't reach. Cudworth is very sombre today, I'm told by text. Parky worked at the Barnsley Chronicle, James, around the time you're talking about. I'm from Cudworth, and it's very sombre in the village today. I'm sure it does. Quite a few people commenting on how Nick sounds a bit like his dad, including Mandy. Sarah Jane's in Sevenoaks. Sarah Jane, what would you like to say?
You can compare Parkinson to David Attenborough. So obviously David Attenborough's nature. Parkinson was the talk show host of all talk shows.
Yes, I think you're right. The doyen is the word that we normally overuse, but on this occasion I think it's appropriate, isn't it?
Yeah, and obviously when he done This Is Your Life, the depth and the knowledge that he was able to get out of the people that he was interviewing was just eye-opening.
He did that after Eamon Andrews, did he?
I can't remember, but the way that he questioned his guests were just second to none.
Getting in there, and because he was so I'll tell you what I've realised as we've been conducting this conversation, is that he always had an invisible notebook in his hand, didn't he? He didn't need notes, but he was always asking questions like a journalist.
His research.
We've lost the phone line there, I'm afraid. Thank you, Sarah Jane. It's coming up to 10:59. You are listening to. I never saw the Peter Kay one. I never saw that. Quite a few people are recommending the Peter Kay one, as in the actor who played Dennis Pennis, Peter Kay. Or am I? Oh no, Peter Kay. That's Paul Kay. Peter Kay, as in garlic bread. Okay, so that was latterly, and Peter Kay did a sort of Billy Connolly, did he? And found new gears, ground new gears for his career. Cudworth, of course it's Cudworth, not Cudworth. There was a tweet yesterday I picked up on. Someone said, you should never criticise somebody for mispronouncing a word because it means they read it. I love that, and it's a beautiful way of thinking about things. And I don't know if it applies to place names, but Henry Riley was in Flitwick earlier, which I spent much of last month calling Flitwick, whenever we referred to Dorry's watch. And I should have known that Cudworth would be Cudworth near Barnsley. Cudworth near Barnsley. At least I've pronounced Barnsley correctly. That was lovely. Thank you for that. Sometimes I think you forget that in many ways I'm a listener as well. I listen to you. But we'll return, I think, to the A-level conversation that we were going to be having after this. 11:02 is the time. I'm not sure that Parky would have wanted the Rod Hell thing to have been played out quite so much to mark his passing, because what was so spectacular about that moment on television was his clear discomfort. He wasn't very happy about it, I don't think. But that's the nature of the beast, isn't it? It was classic television. And thank you for all the kind words about that commemoration, and thank you to everybody who helped us do it. And thank you also to this joker. James, you mispronounced Barnsley. It's correctly pronounced Barnsley. And you've somehow managed to spell it phonetically. So yeah, very good, very funny. I'm going to do something very, very different next, actually, if that's all right. Peter Kay was his warm-up man, apparently. He was a warm-up man on the show. He used to bring his nan, Jack tells me, to the show because she was such a huge fan. He'd be good for full disclosure, wouldn't he, Peter Kay? That would be a very, very nice one. And so, indeed, would Michael Parkinson have been. But that ship, as we've discussed, has sailed. 3 minutes after 11 is the time. I want to talk about something completely different now, if I may. It's not. I'm not going to talk about A-levels because I don't have anything interesting to add to the conversation. If they've gone well for you today, good luck. Well done. If they've gone badly for you today, it's no comfort, is it, to hear that it doesn't matter that much and that everything will come out in the wash. Just sit with your pain. Sit with it, and it will get better. I promise you. But I know that telling you that is not going to accelerate the process or speed it up. And the same goes for mums and dads who are either celebrating or commiserating with their youngsters. And don't forget that if you're lucky enough to go to Harrow School and be the hereditary peer, the third Baron Bethel, then getting bad A-level grades will teach you how to hustle. I want to talk about productivity. Wait, all right, this is really interesting. I want to talk about productivity for two reasons. It's a word, it's one of those words that gets bandied around a lot in political conversations, or particularly economic conversations, and yet which I don't know precisely what it means. I mean, in the most simplistic terms, it's the amount of revenue that is generated per work or per worker or per hour of work, I think. But I could have got that wrong. I'm just telling you my understanding of it. Rishi Sunak is doing some very odd things at the moment. He's sort of going to places of work and behaving like a kind of entertainer. Has he got a bit of the David Brents about him, Rishi Sunak? It's not quite David Brent, is it? I know we've done the In-Betweeners fellow, but who did we hit on the other day that he really reminded us of? He's not like a facsimile of any comedy character. He's not like an absolute dead ringer for Alan Partridge or so, like in the way that some people are. But didn't we hit on one the other day that he reminded? Was it Brent? It's not David Brent. But there's something about his manner when he's in front of there was some footage of him on Twitter yesterday. He's in front of or X as it's now known, an audience of supremely bored-looking people, and he looks like a kind of child star. Do you know what I mean? There's that, and that's not a reference to his height, I promise. There's the really, really bored audience and really high energy coming from him. Like, hey guys, who is it? Who is he reminding us of? Hey you guys, let's do you guy. No, I don't know. Anyway, he's been talking about it in the context of pay rises. Asked whether he wanted to see employers show more moderation in relation to pay rises. A member of one of the richest families in the world said it was not for the government to intervene in the pay decisions of firms and employees, but that as a general rule, pay rises that must reward productivity. As we improve our productivity, pay can rise greater. Now, we have quite low productivity in this country, comparably. And one of the reasons, perhaps, that we have quite low productivity is none of us are entirely sure what it means. So what I want you to do now is not send me text berating me, Graham, for not knowing what productivity means, despite going to the London School of Economics. What I want you to do now is ring me and tell me two things. What exactly is it? And why is the UK's, in comparison to, I mean, especially Germany, which is having economic problems all of its own at the moment, but is it lower? Why is the UK's productivity historically low? Why have we got such a problem with productivity in this country? So question number one, what is it? 0345 6060 973. Question number two, why do we have a problem in this field? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. And question number three is, what's he talking about? Rishi Sunak, when he says that the pay rises must be focused on rewarding productivity increases, he just means profit, doesn't he? But the companies are making enormous profits. So, I mean, I'm confused in a couple of ways, but the idea that companies making enormous profits shouldn't pay their employees more, but companies with high what's the difference between productivity and profit? Because I think that might be the answer to the second question. I think we've got low productivity in this country because everyone's been sucking all the cash out of everything since 1979. And instead of reinvesting in infrastructure. So but part of the reason why the NHS has got so many problems, it's been explained on the programme recently, is linked to the fact that they're not spending money on beds and infrastructure. They're not, despite Boris Johnson's claims, they're not building new hospitals at anything like the scale that we need. So you pump lots of... The NHS might be quite a good example here, even though it's not a commercial enterprise. Well, yet. You pump loads of money into something and you boast about how much money you're spending, but you're actually spending it very stupidly. So the NHS is spending a ton of money on keeping people in beds who shouldn't be in hospital because social care is such a mess. So productivity and profit are two very different things. You would have much better efficiency in the NHS if they were spending money on machinery, on actual equipment, on infrastructure, on buildings, on wards, on beds, and you can pump more and more money into it, but it's inefficient money. So productivity, I think, is increased when you spend money on becoming quicker and better at doing business. Productivity is about infrastructure. So here's £1 million profit at the end of last year from JOB Enterprises, right? What do we make? Sandwiches. We make sandwiches. JOB Enterprises. Here's £1 million. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep it and buy yourself a bunch of Lamborghinis? Or are you going to invest it in sandwich making equipment that means you'll be able to make more sandwiches for less money, and therefore next year you'll make even more? Now, historically, as I understand it, you would have businesses who struck a neat balance between the two. So you'd think, well, I'm going to buy one Lamborghini and I'm going to put the rest of the money back into the business. We're going to put it into research and development. We're going to come up with new flavours. We're going to come up with new equipment. We're going to increase the workforce. We're going to become the sandwich kings of... There is actually an O'Brien sandwich chain, isn't there, in Ireland, with a couple of branches over here, but that's nothing to do with me. And this is simplistic, but I think it works. Or you take all the money out. I think that might be why British productivity is problematic, because we have... Again, it's the free market fetishists. They're always hanging around somewhere in the background like a bad smell whenever we're discussing reasons why the UK... You'd think, wouldn't you, that having essentially admitted that Liz Truss was their dream Prime Minister, Liz Truss was the Queen of Tufton Street, Liz Truss spent more time at the Institute of Economic Affairs than any other politician, Liz Truss was announced as a Prime Minister who would turn Britain into the think tank's laboratory. You'd think that at that point, when she crashed the markets and nearly tipped the country into recession and lost billions of pounds, you'd think at that point, wouldn't you, that broadcasters and newspapers would stop booking these people from these weird outfits that refuse to disclose their funding to comment on the... But no, they're still there telling you the market can judge everything. You don't need to worry about empathy or people or humanity or, God forbid, humanitarianisms. Here's the market. The market will deal with everything. And yet, of course, what they're also doing is representing the interests of wealth, of owners, the owning class. What are you going to do? How does it work? You've got 10 years of making 250 grand a year, or you've got 1 year of making $1 million. I mean, listen, I'm not expecting any prizes for this insight, and I'm sure you've heard it before as well, but I think that might be a reason why productivity in this country is so low. But I have no manufacturing experience. And also, I've forgotten anything I ever knew about economics, so I'd like you to ring me and tell me, what is it exactly? Why is the UK's low, both currently and historically? And is Rishi Sunak making sense to you as an economist, as someone who understands these matters? Is Rishi Sunak making sense when he says that we can only pay people more when we improve our productivity? Does that make economic sense? 0345 6060 973. Because if I've learned anything in the last few years, it is that just because someone who appears to be very glib and plausible and has ended up Prime Minister says something, it doesn't mean that it necessarily contains a single scintilla of sense. I don't mean blatant lies like Johnson. I don't think any other politician is quite in that category. I just mean saying stuff that they don't really understand with enormous confidence. And not expecting anybody to properly pick it apart and work out whether there is any sense in it. So he says, I want people to be paid more, but that means we have to have rising productivity. What does that mean, and does it make sense? Okay. Nick says, you're spot on, James. Since Thatcher, the mill owners have tried everything apart from investing in the workers. That's certainly how I see it. And Julie says, better pay and conditions lead to higher morale and greater productivity. That's why I think he might be talking gibberish that this government claims to want. Most workers will go the extra mile for a good boss. Well, we're back to the old cliche, aren't we? We're back to the idea that if you want somebody poor to work harder, you've got to pay them less. And if you want somebody rich to work harder, you've got to pay them more. That might be part of the problem as well. And Tony in Bushy says, James, you have the wrong definition of productivity. You are referring to profitability. Well, yes and no, Tony. I was actually saying, what's the difference between productivity and profitability? Because I think Sunak's talking about profitability, but you're talking about productivity. Claims that he is talking about productivity. He means efficiency. I said that, Tony. Everyone's a critic. Getting more done with the same resources. Perhaps he's implying that we're all a bunch of lazy shirkers and should work harder. And then we're back to Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng and Dominic Raab writing that book describing British workers as being among the idlest in the world. And that, oh man, I love it when this happens. On the downside, I'm going to have to change chapter 3 of the book slightly. But that's allowed. I'm doing the final proofreading at the moment. So that's why the think tanks peddle this nonsense. Because they're... Crikey. Ah, man, how many times have we referred to that dreadful book, Britannia Unchained, that those dreadful people wrote and then ended up in Downing Street and crashed the country into, the mother of all economic catastrophes. So if you're working for one of these vampiric lobby groups masquerading as a think tank, and you are simply representing the interest of owners and wealth, but you can't possibly say that, and you're getting columns in the Times and the Telegraph and all over the place because they are the interest of owners and wealth. The owners of these papers love you. And productivity in the UK is low because you're leeching all the money out of the business instead of investing it in infrastructure. How are you going to avoid responsibility for low productivity while you continue to make pots of money? Answer: blame it on the workforce. Blame it on the workforce. And up pop Truss, Kwarteng and Raab to write a book which states in black and white that British workers are among the idlest in the world. So why is British productivity so low, lads? You've been in charge for years. Why is British productivity so low? Because British workers are lazy, mate. And then you carry on voting for these people. It's incredible, isn't it? It's 11:15. 17 minutes after 11 is the time. Productivity through punishment, says Andrew. That's what this crowd is all about, punishment. And we are idle workers in this country, says Ian in Sheffield. Have you not heard of Nadine Dorries? We should do I've had this brilliant idea. We should do a radio feature about how long Nadine Dorries has been absent from work. Don't you think that would be really funny? That would be a really good idea. We should we should do something with that. We should try and come up with a really funny idea. To reflect the fact that Nadine Dorries hasn't been to work for ages. Leave that with me. That's why they pay me the big bucks. MPs managed to get wage rises without showing any increase in productivity or profit. But I guess so. But how do you measure a politician's productivity, particularly when they're in opposition? And not reinvesting profits has been called the British disease from as far back as the 1890s, James, when inquiries into our low output of coal per worker compared to Germany was investigated by Parliament. And I mean, listen, if the status quo is enriching you, you'd want to protect the status quo. In fact, you'd want to conserve the status quo, wouldn't you? Even if low productivity and high profits are bad for everybody else in the country, conserving the status quo would be crucial to you. Perhaps you could set up a party. Can you think of a name for a political party dedicated to conserving the status quo? I'll get there in the end. April's in Loughborough. April, what would you like to say?
Hi, morning.
Hello.
It's a really interesting topic, really. But I think the thing that we're not talking about.
What do you mean we're not? You're the first caller. You're the first caller. Literally, how can you criticise us for not talking about it when no one's talked about it yet except me, and I'm making it up as I go along?
Excuse my...
carry on.
Yeah, I apologise for that. I'll carry on. I think productivity obviously is a sign of profitability, but I think it's mainly down to the respect and the connection and the communication that the employees have with the employer.
Interesting.
Hence the relationship, the importance of the relationship that it is that people are actually choosing to work for their employer.
So you're talking,
actually look after the staff.
I would have thought so. You're talking about getting the most that you can out of your workforce, but that's got to go alongside.
How else?
Pardon?
Yeah. How else are you going to increase productivity?
But by having better equipment and better infrastructure as well. But it's definitely not either or, is it?
Can I just say, the only way you're going to get better infrastructure, better equipment, is by better decisions being made at board level, being influenced by the quality of staff they have. Yeah,
God, crikey. But that also involves prioritising profits over 10 years over profits at the end of this year.
Most definitely. I've experienced that massively. I had 25 years in business, and at the end of it was business owner and shareholder and stuff. And I had directors working for me that were basically looking to improve this year's profits, whereas I was, as a shareholder, more long term.
That's interesting.
And I was more interested in like the 10-year profit of the business. But the profit 1 year, I reinvested. Like it was almost like a percentage thing. I reinvested 50% of all profits back into the business, back into the people, back into the equipment, back into the boardroom, so the board could make the right decisions based on the economic pressures. Because obviously, the economic pressures and the social pressures that we're under as individuals, I believe, are obviously generated through the government's decisions. Yes. Obviously, the government we as the nation employ the government. The government decisions influence our social setting and our economic setting. And as individuals, we react to those social settings and those economic settings. So employees are going to become more greedy.
Yes.
They are going to be wanting more security, and unless employers can recognise that and feed that, there is going to be no business, which basically happened to me.
I'm sorry to hear that. When Sunak says then that we want people to be paid more, but we can only do that when productivity is rising, he's not quite joining the right dots, is he?
He doesn't understand it at a micro level.
No, I don't think he does.
In my opinion, and he's not taking accountability for his contribution to that link, to his contribution to that chain of events.
And of course, he can't mention that lots of businesses are going to be very reluctant. As a lot of my texts are pointing out, I'll choose Hazel's. You're never going to increase productivity when no business wants to invest in Britain because everything is so unstable, to which I would add, and we've shut down frictionless trade with the biggest customer right on our doorstep.
As individuals, we've got to understand that whether we're an employee or an employer, we can't work without each other.
No, I bet you were a great boss. Why did things go wrong for you? If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to tell me.
It was cash flow.
Right, yeah.
You know, it kills most businesses, isn't it?
Of course it does. Was this during lockdown? Were you hit by COVID, was it? Or?
It was literally the month of COVID starting.
Right.
So whether there was, a degree of uncertainty that added to my circumstances.
Sure.
But, I then went into massive depression and anxiety and I suffered massively myself. But I've come out of it a lot stronger.
Good.
A lot stronger, with a lot more understanding of what it is like on the other side. Because I had to make, 240 people redundant.
Oh, God.
And it was the most painful thing that I ever did. The most painful thing I ever did in my life.
That's because you're empathetic, though. I was always very wary of... That's because you're empathetic. Mm. I'm always very wary of people who seem to find it easy to sack people. I've worked for a couple over the years, certainly in my newspaper days. It's tricky, though, isn't it, psychologically? I'll run something by you, actually, April, which I only thought of this morning. I obsess about these vampiric free market fetishists, these sort of that are always to let the market decide everything, let the market decide everything. Whereas you've brought very much humanity into that equation. It seems to me that the idea of letting the market decide everything is the economic equivalent of being a sociopath. It's when you don't allow emotion or humanitarianism into your operation. Does that make sense, or do you think I'm barking up the wrong tree?
No, it certainly does.
All right, it's going in the book then. It's absolutely going. It certainly does. Because it was like a penny drop. I thought it's like being a sociopath. So if you are a bit of a sociopath, and I'm not suggesting that Liz Truss or Dominic Raab or Kwasi Kwarteng are devoid of basic human emotion or any scintilla of empathy for their fellow man or woman, but if you were, then this philosophy or this economic philosophy, you'd love it because it kind of helps create a world where you can pretend that emotion and empathy don't matter. Thank you, April. Daniel's in Lowestoft. Daniel, what would you like to say?
So, James, Daniel. I think productivity is terrible in this country because companies in this country are what are called lifestyle businesses. Yeah. So lifestyle means that most of the profit is taken out by the owners to then sustain themselves.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And therefore, because obviously reinvestment doesn't happen a lot on technology and on infrastructure, obviously over time that becomes potentially useless, potentially it's not feasible anymore to use, and it could get inefficient. And therefore, over time, obviously, what could be done in 2 hours, if that equipment isn't maintained properly, it may take longer. And therefore, obviously, what could be done in 2 hours now takes 3 hours. But we could also invest in not only our current infrastructure, but into new technology that does it in an hour rather than 2 hours. And in the UK, we just don't ever see that investment. It's always these lifestyle companies that are run for short-term profit because the owners and even the directors, they want their cut of profit because usually their bonuses are linked to the profit of that year. So
of course they are. 10 years. But why don't... That's the bit I don't quite get. That's the little bit of the jigsaw that's missing for me, because most of us have 20-year careers or 30-year careers or 40-year careers, and some of us even stay in the same place. So when you get to the top of the tree and you're looking 10 years down the road, it's not the directors, is it? It's more about the investor. Well, I suppose that... I think April sort of blurred the line between the two, didn't she, very cleverly? So because your job is to keep the shareholders happy and the dividends flowing. That's actually your job. Your job is not to put in a 10-year structure or ensure that the business is still here in 50 years. Your job is to get the maximum out of the kitty now for the investors or the hedge fund that's bought you. And that's why you're pushing it all. So you're looking at the water companies, aren't you, or something like that? Why on earth would we spend money on improving the business when we can take all the money? We can borrow money on the business and keep it for ourselves.
Exactly, and that's the problem, because the director, if, say, a FTSE 100 company reports a couple of quarters bad profit, it's all about, should the CEO keep their job? Is the board running the company efficiently?
There it is.
Should it be a change of management?
So this is. I mean, people have taken it back to the 19th century and coal mining and low productivity. But the idea, you move around, investors move around, whereas business owners stay put. So if your business is serving investors rather than serving the future, then I do wonder. And of course, where are you going to get the information from? Where are you going to get the expertise from? You're not going to get it from a media that is one of the biggest beneficiaries of the system that we're describing. James in Gillingham reminds us of something quite significant. Thank you, Daniel. Maybe you will take the opportunity during this topic, James, to remind people how Sunak and the Tories left millions of small business owners, sole traders and freelancers to rot during the pandemic with no financial support at all. Many hard-working, tax-paying businesses closed down as a result of this, and it caused huge hardship. You're absolutely right, the 3 million. We did do it quite a lot on the programme, and but it's one of the many things I got wrong during COVID. It was my belief that when the scale of the abandonment became clear, the Tories Rishi Sunak would actually step in to do more, because so much of that cohort of small business people and SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, would be traditionally Conservative voters, would lean towards voting Tory. But that is a very timely reminder of how completely abandoned many business people were, many people in business were, which again, speaks to Sunak. You see, I know it sounds a bit silly, and it sometimes sounds a bit, maybe could be portrayed as the politics of envy, but I can categorically assure you that it isn't. People whose job is money, I don't think they're normal. Your job is money. What my job is people, right? That is my job, is people and words. That's what I do. That's what I do. That's what I love. That's why and somebody else's job might be food, whether you're working in the Ritz or a chippy. Your job is food and people and food, right? Your job's just money. It's just money. What's your job? Money. Got to make money. I've got to make more money. Money. It's turned into a cabaret tribute act, this. But I think it either you got something missing to go into that world, or more likely, the higher up that world you climb, the more you lose empathy, humanity. I don't know what you'd even call it. So in many ways, Rishi Sunak, if it wasn't for the fact that he succeeded Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak could look like the worst imaginable type of person to go into politics, because all he's ever been very good at is making money, often out of other people's misery. Didn't he make a killing in the 2008 financial crisis? How can you make a killing in the 2008 financial crisis and then think, I know, I'm going into government? I don't know. There's something there I haven't quite pinned down. It's 11:30. Thomas Watts is here with your headlines. 34 minutes after 11, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Mystery Hour with us at 12, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else in your radio world. But we haven't done this for a while, have we?
Woke Watch.
But no Dorries, you see, just Woke Watch today. This is in the Daily Telegraph today. I kid you not. In many countries, university overexpansion has created a toxic two-tier society, fueling elite overproduction. Woke stormtroopers have seized control of culture, education and business across the English-speaking world, imposing nihilistic gender extremism and critical race theories. That's by someone called Alistair Heath, who was writing in incredibly glowing terms about what a brilliant budget Kwasi Kwarteng released, and what an amazing Prime Minister Liz Truss was going to be. So when I talk to you about how these people are utterly untarnished or untouched by their support for ridiculously awful things, I thought very kind of him to pop up. My thanks to Mick Wright for drawing this to my attention on Twitter today. But goodness me, the examples of what I'm trying to describe to you are coming out of my ears today. That's absolutely so. Ego as well. Someone who thought Liz Truss was a genius. The governing classes have got it shockingly wrong on many other issues. From foreign policy to COVID to money printing, and never atone for their mistakes. So here is a man writing in the Daily Telegraph who was probably Liz Truss's biggest cheerleader in the British media and thought Kwasi Kwarteng's budget was a stroke of unparalleled genius, still writing in the Daily Telegraph about how awful it is that people never atone for their mistakes. And you think I exaggerate.
Woke Watch.
While we're here, we may as well... Dorries! It is now 9:21, 52, 59, 69 days since Nadine Dorries vowed to resign from the House of Commons, resign as an MP. 69 days, that's more than 3, is it 60? So 30, 29, 21 plus 30 days, half September, April, June and November. Yeah, so 29 plus 21 plus 31 is 52, and it's now the 17th, so 52, 62, 69 days. 69 days since Nadine Dorries vowed, as a woman of God. She once said that she'd only become a politician because God told her to. Nadine Dorries vowed 69 days ago to resign as an MP with, and I quote, immediate effect, end quote. Nadine Dorries is still an MP. Dorries! John's in Friday Bridge. That sounds nice. Why is it called Friday Bridge?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello, John. Sorry. I took you by surprise there, didn't I?
You did, actually.
Oh, that's all right. I was lulling you. I was lulling you into a false sense of security. Where does the name Friday Bridge come from?
A long time ago, when it's much more medieval, there used to be a group of monks that brought fish over a bridge to the little local village, and it got established as...
And that was the only time they left the monastery, probably, was it?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So Friday Bridge, near Wisbech.
Yeah, Friday Bridge. Yeah, near Wisbech, yeah. Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, you live and learn. What made you pick up the phone? I bet you can't remember.
I can, actually. I spent my whole life in manufacturing.
Oh, good.
And I started as an apprentice, went through into design, then into production management. And almost certainly, without count, the reason a business is not productive is almost certainly down to the management team.
Yes.
You take on good employees, you keep good employees, you make sure they work. If you don't invest in those employees, whether it's equipment, training, environment, then for whatever reason, of any one of those reasons, productivity may go down. Normally the key factor, if it's not environment, is underinvestment.
Yeah.
You look at the way people run businesses, and they treat employees as assets, which is a fundamental mistake.
Yeah.
If you're going to sweat the asset. If you look at people as an investment and you train them, you give them the right tools, you make sure the environment's good, you really cannot get anything better than manufacturing. And there's people that miss this completely. And our current crop of, I hate to say this, Tory ministers and Prime Minister have no concept of manufacturing. They talk about productivity, whereas there's two key measures for me in a business if you're looking at the operation of people. It's efficiency and productivity.
Yes.
Productivity is based on the hours spent at business. So you get in at whatever time, 7:30, and you leave at 5.
Yes.
And you calculate how much that person or that team did.
Yeah.
Now, that will give you a productivity figure. If you really want to know what's going on, you look at efficiency as well. So you see how much of that person's day they were active.
Yes.
Now, if they're only active 2 or 3 hours a day and the rest of it they spent doing something else, well, then you look at why they're not active all day long. And more often than not, they've had machinery breakdowns, material shortages, not been trained properly.
Supply chain problems, so the kit's not there that when they need it, and it's got to sit around for an hour waiting for a delivery.
Yeah, it's absolutely hopeless. I spent 3 years in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Working with German teams, also moving into Eastern Europe. And I can honestly say people in Germany don't work any harder than the people that I've met. And I've been through quite a few companies in the UK.
Yeah.
Predominantly, almost definitely every time, it's either underinvestment in equipment, underinvestment in training, or the area that they're working in is not conducive to manufacturing. You don't want to walk into a manufacturing area and everybody is not saying a word to each other.
No.
You walk into a manufacturing area and there's a buzz. People are communicating. There's things moving. It's tidy. I'm not saying it's polished to gleaming, but it's tidy. Material's got clear designation of where it should be. People know what they're doing. They understand the drawings they've got. Productivity is just a be-all and end-all term for me that it identifies poor management.
I think you're right. I think that was a really helpful explanation. For some reason, John, in the middle of it, I had an image of someone working their fingers to the bone trying to clean a massive steam engine with a toothbrush. And now their productivity, in a sense, is incredibly high, or certainly their exertion is incredibly high, but their efficiency is minimal because they're using a blooming toothbrush.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what people are doing, you do your best to understand it, and sometimes it means actually sitting down on the line, doing the job, and getting a feel for it.
Of course, it does. So, what's Sunak talking in your view? When Sunak says, "I want people to be paid more, but that means we have to have rising productivity," what do you think he thinks he means?
I think he's looking at making people work harder. But if you're in a business and you're pretty much
just shout at the bloke with the toothbrush. Just shout at the bloke. Come on, scrub more, toothbrush boy.
Bigger whip.
Yeah, bigger whip. A bigger whip. That's beautifully put.
Let's see if that makes them work better. But really and truly, what you do is you look at them and you think, oh my gosh, they're using a flat blade screwdriver trying to tighten up a crosshead screw, for instance.
Yeah.
Or they're packing things by hand and counting them into bags, whereas for probably 10k or around that, you can buy something that puts parts into a bag, gets it right every time, and pumps out hundreds per minute. You've got to look at a combination of people and equipment, which it comes down to investment, which ultimately,
of course,
it comes back to management team.
And priorities. And what are you trying to do? Feather the nest of an investor, or put the business on an even stronger footing for next year than it was on last year?
Yeah, if you haven't got the vision to say what we actually need is to invest this year, and we need to put that machine correct, or we need to replace that machine, and yes, it's going to cost us £100,000, and that is going to come off the bottom line. But next year, it's going to produce £200,000. So it's not having the foresight to want to make the investment. It's thinking, all I can see is tomorrow and I want to make more profit for myself. Profit is healthy, but it's got to be done with the right controls, and the controls include looking after people, investing in people, because they're your biggest asset. I'd have worked for you, John. I think I could have done a decent day. I could have done a decent shift for you, but because it keeps shining through. Actually, I stumbled into this really, and it fits obviously with a lot of my developing theories about free market fetishists and prioritising profit over people and all the rest of it. But the sense that this country has been embarked upon an entirely wrong course for generations is really hard to resist. Thank you, John. That was a brilliant call. And you've introduced me to Friday Bridge. I love that kind of little bit of local knowledge. The time now is 11:43. I like this. I'll read this out. It's not Idiot's Corner. You're perfectly entitled to this position, but it's such an odd thing to do. This text just arrived while John was talking. By mistake, it transpires my car radio broadcasted James O'Brien. What an obnoxious, self-opinionated person he is. How is he allowed to broadcast such biased twaddle? What a dreadful programme. Hard-working, risen-to middle-class citizen. It's signed. I love Idiot's Corner, and I used to love the Box of Trolls as well. But the mystery of how desiccated an existence would have to be to think that's the best thing I can do with my time at this point in my life. I'm gonna what did you do? Did you pull over? You should get your radio looked at for a start. But thank you for two reasons. It was it made me smile. It slightly distracted me from the job in hand. It's coming up to 11:45. Mystery Hour on the way in 15. 11:48 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the difference, if you like, between productivity and profit
and indeed the crucial distinction between productivity and efficiency has prompted one of the most informative and illuminating conversations we've had in ages. It's all here today, isn't it? Really moving first hour and marking the passing of Sir Michael Parkinson, and an incredibly helpful second hour. I guess the downside is that it adds to the sense that Rishi Sunak doesn't really know what he's playing at, which is certainly the impression he's beginning to give on an almost irresistible scale. And I say that regardless of what your politics might be. You can't be looking at him and thinking, yeah, there's a guy I trust with the nation's fortunes. Although maybe you can, because some of you looked at Boris Johnson and thought that, which I guess on a great scale of odd things to do knocks Rishi Sunak into a cocked hat. Ben's in Swansea. Ben, what do you reckon? What would you like to say?
Hi, James. Good to talk to you.
Likewise.
The reason I think it's a difficult topic to resolve is I think both sides have quite valid points. On the one hand, I think if you prioritise shareholder dividends and management bonuses, you should absolutely expect low productivity as a result of failing to invest in infrastructure, poor pay packages, leaving people demoralised, and all of that leads to low productivity. I think that's a really sound argument to make. But on the other hand, I think as a country, we are on the opposite end of the spectrum to, say, Japan.
Yes.
Whereas they have a culture of Kaizen, of continuous improvement, and of doing something to the best of your ability. More and more, it seems to me that in the UK, we seem to identify with the idea of quiet quitting and of doing just enough to...
It's chicken and egg, though, isn't it? It's chicken and egg, isn't it?
Yeah, you could argue that. But
I think I would quite passionately argue that, particularly with the words of April and John ringing in my ears, in that a cherished employee is a very, very productive employee.
I agree with you, but I think this argument quite easily dissolves into an ideological one of which side of the political spectrum you sit in. And I think you need to hit it from both ends. And I think the sanity is usually somewhere in the middle ground of things, as it is with most things. But
if you've got...
I don't resolved.
Yeah, nor do I, actually. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it is ideological, but I'm looking at a business that has been filleted, right? Some people suggesting Royal Mail is quite a good example of this at the moment, but I don't fully, Ian, as in Yorkshire says that the only concern is over this year's dividends. But if you look at a business that is being run like that, what difference is it? I mean, why would you turn up and put in a mega shift? Why wouldn't you quiet quit if you're not getting any share of the spoils or any of the action and you feel that your employer is treating you like poo?
Yeah, it's your chicken and the egg comment. It's unless management and I think the workforce in general can come together and have a moment of this is how it's going to be unless we all decide to do things differently.
But why would management do that as long as they are rewarded according to this year's profits as opposed to...
They won't.
So I don't know whether we're ideologically different. I'm blaming the owners. You're a bit closer to blaming the workers.
I blame everybody.
That's an equal opportunities approach to the
absolutely. I think if management bonuses are related to kind of bottom line profits, then they're going to prioritise those because they don't know how long they're going to be in that job, and for them as an individual, that makes sense. But it's not in the interest of the company or the economy as a whole.
Equity is important, perhaps, for normal workers as well. If normal workers had more equity and if management rewards and bonuses were linked more to equity than immediate short-term profit, that would be beneficial, probably.
But I think it's too far gone, certainly for someone like me to have the idea. I'll leave that up to better minds, but it's a problem that unfortunately I don't see getting fixed.
No, which makes Sunak's comments silly then, or not?
I think most of his comments are silly.
Yeah, that's true. But this particular idea that you can have greater wages when productivity is rising. I mean, if productivity was something that you could turn up and down like a volume knob, the government would have probably more influence over what volume we're at than almost anything else in society, in the economy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the idea of good old-fashioned hard work is rewarded is quite an old-fashioned one these days, and it generally doesn't work that way.
Which is one of the reasons why people are quiet quitting.
Yeah, but
to bring us full circle.
But it makes the problem worse.
It does. You're absolutely right. It makes the problem worse, which is a different chicken and a different egg, but another chicken and egg scenario. Thank you, Ben. That was really helpful as well. Stuart's in Basingstoke. Stuart, what do you reckon?
Hello, James. Great show as always.
Oh, you're very
I thought
kind.
Mr. Friday Bridge did a great little bit as well,
did,
actually.
Because, yeah, really helpful.
Yeah, because I'm sitting exactly where he is. So technical expertise, I think, is just not respected by management in this country. It's not wanted. People want everyone to focus on time and cost all the time, yet the people that really know what they're doing are never given the sort of time or reward to really get that embedded in the culture in British industry. And I find it painful. Like, you can look in every aspect, whether it was COVID, Boris Johnson didn't want to listen to the technical expertise. You know, we could go over that, hundreds of examples there. He didn't want to listen to what the advice was. He wanted to do his own thing because he had his own agenda, because he had his own money-based views rather than the technical-based skills.
Also, the necessary rejection of expertise that was that came about of Brexit. And I'm not being Brexity. I'm not being James O. Brexit. I was reading up. Do you remember where Michael Gove said, I think the country has had enough of experts from organisations
Don't get me on that. That one riles me up all the time.
But do you know what question he was answering?
No, I don't remember.
No, nor did I. I just stumbled across it yesterday. I've got to stop revising this book, Stuart, because it's never going to bloody end if I don't actually just hit send. But he was asked very straightforwardly to name economists who think that Brexit is a good idea. And his response was, I think the country has had enough of people from experts from all. So it's all, you're right to bring it into the conversation, the Johnson approach. It's all built on rejection of expertise.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the only thing I would like to kind of add, because I know don't want to take up too much time, is I think there are glimmers of hope, because in the industry I work in, there is a few who really want to drag that technical expertise, reward people, not just shove them in a team leader role because it's worth more money, but go, you are valued as an engineer or as a scientist. Like, you don't have to go and lead a team, which is not your skill set. Go and be a good engineer. Go and be a good scientist. And how many times have people gone, actually, I like being an engineer, but I'm going to have to be the team leader and do HR stuff. I'm going to have to do the paperwork. And all of a sudden, you've got your best engineer filling in paperwork about people being sick or
because
their timesheet.
That's it, isn't it? Management more important than expertise, or actually on the coal face, as it were. What sector are you in, if you don't mind me asking?
Nuclear.
Oh wow! Well, that's encouraging, isn't it? I hope it's energy, not bombs.
It's the kind of across the board.
Okay.
So, in general.
What? So, that's just all taken an unexpected turn. You are the Oppenheimer of Basingstoke.
Well, with the industry itself has lots of regulation and stuff, and part of that is that we make sure that we keep skills up, and it's really important. And it's one of the few places I see it, because everywhere else you go, nobody wants to kind of be stuck on a lower wage for doing the thing that they love, but they think of their families, they think of their bottom line. Yeah. You think, well, actually, I need that little bit of money because I want to have a family. I have to go into team leader, or I have to, give up what I know to do something which I'm not.
And then you're not using your expertise, bizarrely.
No, exactly. And you look at higher roles in businesses. I'm sure you can see it where you work. The people doing a lot of the actual sort of...
everyone here is wonderful. Everyone here is wonderful. How dare you?
Yeah. But there was the Michael Parkinson comment earlier. The foot soldiers, they're the ones that really make it work. And if you're forcing them into a position where they can't make ends meet, especially as we look at wages at the moment, you're forcing them down to a corridor where they have to do something they're not necessarily best skilled at, you're going to get productivity issues. And it is just the culture in Britain. We kind of stiff upper lip and we don't...
You do indeed. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You see it in all businesses. Like the equivalent in journalism would be people ending up working in the office all day, or moving into editorial, when in fact they were brilliant doorsteppers. They were brilliant on the road, on the job. But the bigger rewards come. The ladder just almost leads in the wrong direction. Thank you, Stuart. I can squeeze in one more. It's going to be Gary in Gloucester, but it's going to have to be quick. Gary, what would you like to say?
Good morning.
Hello.
Yes, it's about productivity. Just a small story. Probably about 20 years ago, I joined a small startup company after about a year as a production manager. And we had a good ethos at the company. My basic hours was 9 to 5, but I'd come in early and stay late to run machinery. Invariably, most weekends, I'd come in and run the machinery. Come every November pay packet, 20% bonus as a thank you. Now, I was a manager, so I was, a salaried staff, but it was a thank you for coming in and doing extra work.
Yeah, I like that, and I understand the story, but I don't like you doing all those hours unpaid.
Yes, but that was the whole point, is I wasn't the only one. You had salaried staff running machinery, and they were getting paid overtime and the likes of that. But come the end of the year, they were still getting a bonus as well as a thank you for doing the overtime. So it wasn't just me; they were getting a bonus as well.
But
so
I mean, look, in an ideal, I'm letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, I think. But I'd have liked you to have got the overtime and the bonus as well, Gary. But
well, I think that's the problem you have when you're a manager and stuff like that. You don't usually get paid overtime.
The responsibility shifts, doesn't it? And it's you're not on the clock, because if something happens when the clock's not ticking, that's your responsibility as well. I've never done it. That's probably why I've never made the fade. That's a great story, and it is. I mean, to me, as a obviously someone who's never run a business, it's always seemed fairly clear to me that the more you look after the staff, the more the staff looks after you. But then everyone's got an example of someone who's watching the clock and taking all of the sick days they're entitled to every year, whether they're sick or not, and it's a terrible jobs, but not so much a job's worth. What's the word you're looking for? The kind of the member of staff who thinks that the company owes him a living rather than, but it cuts both ways. I just think they're in a tiny minority, a small enough minority to be negligible when it comes to the question of why productivity is so low. It's coming up to 12 noon. It's Thursday. It's Mystery Hour.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 12 is the time, and here it is, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere on your radio. Give me a ring. 0345 606 0973 is the number you need if you have a mystery. I don't know how much explanation do you need these days, really? I'm conscious of wanting new people discovering this moment of radio magic, to feel welcome, to feel warm and to feel appreciated. But I don't know, I mean, it's Mystery Hour. People ring in with mysteries. I sort of banter a bit with them. And then people ring in with answers, and I banter a bit with them as well. And somehow, from those rather unprepossessing ingredients, magnificent meals are made, magnificent cakes are baked, magnificent moments are shared. But in the first instance, I can't do much unless you ring in. And by the way, my favourite contribution of the day wins a magnificent prize. This week's prize is a brooch of purest green. No, I'm joking. This week's prize is the same as every week's prize. It is a brand new Mystery Hour board game. Hours of fun. All the family as well, genuinely all the family. Play it with nephews, play it with grandparents, in-laws. Everybody loves Mystery Hour. And it's one of those very social games as well, which becomes a sort of, the bedrock upon which you can build beautiful times together. Find out more at mysteryhour.co.uk or get a free one by being brilliant on Mystery Hour today. You can find the full terms and conditions at lbc.co.uk. I think we'll just crack straight on, will we? Karen is in Cradley Heath. Karen, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Karen.
James, I've just come back from a lovely holiday in Greece.
Oh, splendid. Where were you? Whereabouts?
Yeah. Corfu, Kerkia.
Oh, and it was all right, was it?
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, forget the wildfires. That was hyped up worse than it was. Yeah, I never believe anything on mainstream media. Except for you, James.
You're on mainstream media now, Karen.
Except for you, James.
All right, then. Go on, then. I shouldn't have asked. What's the question?
Right, so me and my husband having a bit of a tanning competition, as we always do.
Yes.
My question is, why do certain parts of your body take longer to tan than other parts of your body?
It's all controlled by the World Economic Forum.
Probably, yeah. But our legs, your legs are always the last to go brown.
Yeah, well, it'll be. So, I mean, the short answer will be melanin, won't it? It's to do with.
Yeah, but I know you get brown because of the amount of melanin in your skin, but surely you haven't got less melanin in your legs than everywhere else in your body.
You will have, because you've got more melanin underneath a freckle than you have in the rest of your body. So it's going to be something to do. I think it is. I'm sounding like I know what I'm talking about, but I think it's going to have something to do with melanin distribution and the bits of your body that are exposed to the sunlight least are going to be the bits that tan hardest. So well, I went to a nudist beach once in Crete, actually, Karen.
Really?
Yes, I did. And
Did you go very brown?
I wasn't there long enough, but if I had been, then I suspect the bits that your legs would go brown quicker than your bits. Because they see even less. Your bits see even less sunlight than your legs do. But your arms go more than your body, than your chest does.
Yeah, but my stomach goes really brown in like 3 days.
Oh, does
but
it?
It takes a lot longer for my legs to catch up.
Yeah. Well, the stomach is a good example because I presume you're not wandering around cradly in a crop top on a regular basis.
Nobody wants to see me in a crop top now.
I shall. Listen, if I promise to get you an answer, will you promise to be a bit more open to the fact that people who do what I do for a living are generally more trustworthy than people on Facebook?
James,
Karen.
Please don't get me wrong. I'm your biggest fan.
No, I know, no, but it's not just me.
I don't class you as mainstream media.
But I am. But my friends and family are journalists, and I promise you that almost all of them on proper papers they're doing a decent job. I promise you, especially on stuff like COVID and clean air and all that stuff. Promise me you'll at least think about it.
Yeah, I only listen to you, James.
All right, then. Well, you'll be safe. You'll be safe. So 8 minutes after, there's a book as well. Neil's in South Hornchurch. Neil, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on, Neil.
Moths.
Moths
in your clothes.
Yes.
What possible nutrition can they get out of eating wool and keep living?
Well, what about woodworm?
Well, they eat wood.
Yeah, what possible nutrition can they get out of wood?
True.
I mean, it's just grass. We wouldn't be much use eating grass, would we? But cows do.
Yeah, but I mean, the moth. What? Okay, so I want to know what nutrition it gets. What does it? How does it keep alive by eating wool?
It's organic.
Okay.
It's organic material, isn't it? Anything organic is nourishing.
That's straight up, is it?
I'm not going to get a round of applause for that, am I? But it's going to be part. I mean, the answer is going. I mean, it's about what you can digest. So, okay, energy. I'm going to have a go at this. Actually.
Sure.
Strap yourself in. So everything is energy, right? So what you have in your tummy is the capacity to turn one type of energy into another type of energy, and your energy comes from carbohydrates and protein, and but there's some things you wouldn't be able to break down, like grass.
Right.
And wood, and also wool. But if you had a different,
could we not eat anything from wood? Could we not? Nothing.
I don't think so. I mean, you might. I wouldn't have thought so. Don't try this at home, children.
Don't go and slice a bit off the trunk.
Don't have a lolly. Yeah, exactly. Your sister can have a lolly. You can have the stick. You break the wool. So it's obviously if it's taken energy to create it, right?
Yeah.
Then you can break it down to release energy. And that is why it's not. That's not bad, Neil, is it?
It's not bad, no.
But we'll go further. Someone will go further. Yeah, no, definitely. But that will be close. I like it. Well, you haven't got moths, have you? Because we met a lovely bloke in where was it? Brentwood, I think, who just set up a pest control company last week.
Oh, I listened to that. Yeah.
You're not infested.
Well, no, I had to go to a funeral a couple of weeks ago. My wife said, "Get your black cardigan, your nice black Reese cardigan out."
Oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah. I said, "But hasn't that got a hole in it?" She went, "Yeah, but it's only small." And I've sewn it up. When I got it out, there's about 4 different new ones.
It's come back again.
It's a lavender. Got to get the lavender.
Well, you think it's probably time to say goodbye to that particular cardigan. If you turned up at my funeral in a cardigan full of holes, Neil, I would not be very well. I probably wouldn't notice, but I wouldn't if I was capable of clocking it. I wouldn't be very impressed. Thank you, Neil. How can moths live on wool and we can't? Dave's in Goose Tree in Cheshire. Dave, question or answer?
I've got a question, James.
Carry on.
Why do we lick our thumbs to make them sticky to turn pages on newspapers and books?
Yes. Well, this is because the paper is absorbent, so it creates a sort of bond, a glue-like bond.
Okay. Well, I tell you, I've actually spoken to you before. I'm a percussionist.
Yes.
With the Halley Orchestra.
Oh, fantastic.
When we do trills, quiet trills on a tambourine, we lick our thumbs to go around the skin, and the thumb judders on the skin. So
that would fit with my theory, wouldn't it? Because it's sticking a bit. But
the skin's not absorbent, so...
It is a bit.
Yeah, so...
Isn't it?
I don't know. I mean,
what happens if you don't lick your finger? Is it finger or thumb when you're trilling a tambourine?
Well, it's either thumb or finger. You can do either. But if you don't, then the thumb just slides along the tambourine.
So if you don't lick it, it's frictionless, and if you do lick it, it's friction. It must be absorbing a bit, then, mustn't it? I don't know. Yeah. It's a great question.
I mean,
I prefer. Why did you come in on the newspapers? I'd have gone in on the tambourines personally if I'd rung you. It's a better question.
Yeah. Well, I suppose if you're walking along a pavement and it's slightly wet, I know a pavement's not absorbent, but you know, then you slip over. So it seems to me counterintuitive to lick your finger or your thumb.
But the pavement has formed a sheen on top of the water has formed a sheen on top of the pavement, like I imagine it was ice rather than water. It's not. It's not. I don't think this is going very well.
No, I mean to be honest, to demonstrate. To pupils, sometimes my pupils, how licking your thumb can make it judder. I actually do it on a table or a hard surface, and it works. It makes it judder. So you've got to have
the way that you're not just pushing your finger across the surface, are you? Is there not a technique to a trill?
I mean, you put a bit of pressure on, a slight bit of pressure, but not a great deal. If you put too much on it,
What are you working on at the moment?
We're actually on holiday at the moment, but we start back in September. And
what's up first, you know?
We're recording the complete ballet music for Benjamin Britten's Prince of the Pagodas, which is a fantastic piece. So.
Is there a lot in it for you?
Yeah, lots and lots.
Right. How do you do it when you get a new piece? Do you flick through looking to see how much percussion there is?
Yeah.
Straight away?
Yeah,
it's how many lines you've got for actors, really, isn't it? It's the same thing.
Exactly, yeah.
I find your job absolutely fascinating. I was at the Bridgewater Hall not long ago, but it wasn't for one of your gigs. It was the BBC lot doing the...
Oh, dear, right.
Well, don't say, oh, dear. You're all on the same... But I find your job fascinating.
Yeah,
Because there's quite a lot of not doing much, and then there's relish. And then on other pieces of music, you're very, very busy. But sometimes...
Well, they do so as percussionists. You're either bored to death or scared to death.
I've not heard that before. Yeah. That's exactly what I was trying to communicate. Who's the bloke who does the really... it sounds like choral music. Well, it is choral music, but he's still alive. He's quite modern, but he's very... they did him. The thing I went to, it was a really good one for...
Carl Jenkins.
No, he's just passed away, hasn't he?
Has he? Oh, dear.
I think he has. Sorry. I think I may be wrong. I'll tell you, De Profundis, Olaf Part.
Oh, yeah. Arvo Part.
Arvo Part.
Yeah.
That's good for a percussionist, isn't it? He's got the bells and everything. Is that you? Do you do the dongs?
That's right, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
You don't sound enthused by Arvo Part. Is he not one of your favourites?
Not a massive fan, no.
It's coming across that, actually. Does this make me a bit of a Philistine, then, thinking it
No, not at all, no. It's good stuff.
Is it good stuff?
Not my bag.
I just really enjoy... Well, I shall see you on stage at the Bridgewater Hall at some point in the not-too-distant future. I'm up in... When I'm up in Manchester. I've got the date, actually. I'll double-check in a minute. Thank you, Dave. 12:15 is the time.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
18 minutes after 12 is the time. I just accidentally killed someone. Carl Davis passed away, the brilliant composer Carl Davis, not Carl Jenkins, the composer that Dave was talking about, the percussionist with the Halle Orchestra just up in Manchester, trilling a tambourine. 18 minutes after 12 is the time. Why does licking your finger create friction, I guess, is the question, isn't it? I think. It helps it stickier, turning a page or trilling a tambourine. Why? How can moths eat wool and we can't? And why do some parts of our body tan quicker and deeper than others? But just again, Carl Jenkins very much still with us. I'm delighted to say. Tom's in Hopton-on-Sea. Tom, what would you like? Question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Tom.
We've had a lot of rain recently. Well, this week has been really nice, but 2 weeks before that was just rain.
It was.
And I just wondered why sometimes you get drizzle, sometimes you get what I would call normal rain, and then sometimes that really come down hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember at school we used to do the experiment of a cloud as like a sponge, but you haven't got someone up there squeezing a cloud to make the water come out quicker.
So why do you have different pressures of rain, really?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a brilliant question or a daft one.
Yeah, why does it not just get to a certain volume of water, the cloud, and then it drops? Why does it maybe then get
I think that's a
heavier
really
so
good
it
question.
falls quicker, or...
It can't be heavier, can it?
No, so I didn't know why you get the...
Size
is
of
it
drop?
maybe-
Size of drop? Could size of drop be...
I didn't know if it was something to do... It can't be the wind pushing it down quicker, because I thought the wind would go side to side.
Whether people talk a lot about pressure, so maybe the pressure we're talking about is linked to the pressure they talk about. Pressure. Because pressure would increase the speed with which the rain comes up, would it?
Yes.
I like that. That's a good question, I think. But if it's a daft one, then we're both in it together. Because I'm on side. I'm on your... I think I'm interested in that. Why are there different speeds of rain? Different levels of rain? Hardness of rain. Sometimes it bounces. 20 minutes after 12. Thank you, Tom. Phil's in Croydon. Phil, question or answer?
Hello, James. Just before I ask my question,
yes.
Brilliant first hour, sir.
Oh, it was lovely, wasn't it? Thank you. It was very little to do with me. I was just lucky that everyone who was listening, but it was quite nice. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that.
No problem. Right, my question is, it sounds a little bit odd at first, but what do you see when your eyes are closed?
How do you mean?
Well, if you sit back in your chair, close your eyes...
Yeah.
Do you see any shapes drifting across what would ordinarily be your vision?
Okay. I see what you mean.
I'm glad you do.
Yeah, but you mean you don't... So there's quite a lot going on here, isn't there? Because one answer is nothing, just darkness. But you mean you've got the light sometimes. If you've just looked at a light and you close your eyes, you're seeing the ghost of the light, aren't you?
Yeah, although when I tend to go to sleep and obviously the lights are off, it happens all the time to me anyway. So, I mean, I bet from other people who have asked, they're familiar with the sensation.
Yes. You mean things just drifting across your line of vision except your eyes aren't open? Shapes and colours.
Random, they could be straight lines, or they could be sort of clouds, sort of like little explosions happening in the foreground.
Blimey! If you take a lot of mushrooms.
No, I just listened to your show.
It's a long pause there, Phil. Well, so what are the shapes and colours and little explosions that you see when your eyes are closed? I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you, Phil. Rain. Eyes closed, page turning, moths and tanning. It's all here. Millen is in Paris. Millen, question or answer?
Answer for the page turning.
Carry on.
There's three factors at play. Firstly, if you've got dry skin and you lick your finger, you can slightly moisten the skin, and dry skin is worse at gripping stuff than wet skin because it's less flexible. In terms of turning a page, why does a wet thumb stick to a page? It's because water is cohesive, which means it likes to stick to itself, and so the water on your thumb goes onto the page, and the water on the thumb and the page like to stick to each other. So
that's what I said about a bit gluey. So that was correct, but not very technical.
But why is it slippery? Well, it's because the liquid is lubricating between the two surfaces. So if you have your shoe and a floor, they're not good at slipping against each other because they're both quite rough.
Yes.
If you put a bit of water in there, it's good at sliding around. So
the water is sliding on the water, really, in a way.
Sure, yeah, the water molecules are good at moving over each other, exactly.
So they're good at bonding and moving over each other. It's one of those slightly counterintuitive physical properties, is it?
Well, it's not. I mean, they're good at bonding, but they're good enough at bonding to make you be able to pick up a page, but they're not good enough at bonding to keep your weight from falling to the floor.
Got it.
I don't know what sort of...
I've got it. I'm picturing it. Qualifications?
Masters in chemistry.
Well played. Round of applause for Millen, please. That'll do nicely. There it is. I get it. 12:24. David's in Lewis. David, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's a question, please.
Yes.
It's about train drivers sounding their horns or their hooters or whatever they're called. I can't quite understand why they do it for a start, because there doesn't seem to be anybody to warn. on the line.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, but if there was,
have...
they would. So that's why they have them, I suppose, in the first instance.
Yes, that's true. But sometimes when they're approaching the local station, they sort of sound the horn. I mean, is that just a sort of a courtesy thing to let people waiting at the platform? I mean, are there rules, do you think? Do you think they've got rules?
Good question. Because we wave from, well, the kids are a bit old now, but we used to wave from a bridge near us, and quite often they would toot back. Not always, but quite often.
Yeah, that's right. We had something similar on a holiday in France when the kids would run out into the garden and take their shorts down and show their naked bums to the train driver, and he would hoot at them, and it was one of the
this has taken on an unexpected turn. This conversation, mooning French train drivers. Did you write? Was that the title of your first volume of memoir? Was it mooning French? A Year in Provence. It was next to on the shelf in Waterstones. Mooning French train drivers. Thank you, David. I shall try to find out for you. What are the rules? I will keep it, I think, British. I don't know what the rules are for French. Maybe it's compulsory for French train drivers to moon to mooning school children. 25 after 12 is the time. Stuart's in Chigwell. Stuart, question or answer?
It's answer, James. Great show as always.
You're very kind. What have you got?
Common clothes moth.
Yeah.
What they eat, what they live off. They live off something called keratin. It's in all furs pretty much, and some of our fingernails and hair.
Keratin, Kera.
Yeah, that's it.
That's also what a rhinoceros's horn is made of, I think.
Yep. So they survive off that, along with the humidity in the air. So you find them sometimes more in the bottom of, say, a boiler cupboard where there's an old bit of wool carpet because it's a bit more humidity.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what they're eating. That's what they survive off, and they can survive for a very long time.
It'd be a protein, would it? Keratin? It'd be a protein.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it'd be a protein.
And on the moisture question, my friend Nick texted me on this one and said he thought it had something to do with perspiration and that the moths are actually getting nutrition not from the wool but from the sweat. But it would actually be a little bit of both, perhaps.
Well, both, yeah. So, but if you put your, shall we say, your sweaty, nasty clothes back in the wardrobe,
yes,
that would help. The moisture would help, but general moisture in the air, due to the humidity, will give them the water content they need, along with the protein.
Which is, so when you put them in a kind of Ziploc bag, you're doing two things. Number one, you're you're really keeping the moth out of there, aren't you? But you're also minimising the likelihood of moisture being absorbed.
Exactly. And if you freeze that bag for a couple of days prior to putting it in the wardrobe, you will kill any eggs or larvae of any common clothes moth in there.
Qualifications, Stuart?
I've got a pest management level 3 qualification, a family-run pest control company since 1996.
That's nice. How's business?
Busy with the wasps and hornets at the moment.
Excellent. What's the name of the company? This is the second 2 in 2 weeks now. There's a new fella in Brentwood who's chasing your business, Stuart. I better give you an.
No, I don't mind. I'm in Essex. I'm away from Brentwood. He's all right. He can keep his work.
Go on then.
It's Kill and Cure Pest Control.
Kill and Cure. Oh, that's nice. Yep. I like that. Oh, great work. Thank you, Stuart. It's a proper science, pest control. You see, it's round of applause for Stuart.
Thank you. Made my day.
Thank you, mate. You made mine. Lovely stuff. 12:26. I don't know why I'm so fascinated by it. I think it's because we had a lovely bloke, Ricky, at Environ Pest Control, and his brother Jimmy. I think it's because they come into your life when you're at a really low ebb, depending on what it is you've got, and they're like magicians. They just fix stuff. It's lovely. Marty's in Belfast. Marty, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's a question.
Carry on.
Okay, it's about the world of golf. You see the golfers on the telly.
You do.
They have a golf glove on, but they only have one.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as to why they only have one golf glove.
Because one of the hands needs to stay stuck to the shaft, and
no, trust me, James. Both hands need to be on the shaft.
No, but one of them needs to have a bit of give when you play a stroke.
Yeah.
So the bottom. Where do you wear the glove? On the bottom hand?
No, the top hand.
The top hand. So the top hand is the. No, does that work? Does that work as an answer? Why not? The top hand is. Well, obviously one of them needs a little bit less friction than the other for some reason.
Why?
What's grippier, the bare hand or the glove hand?
James, I played golf for 30 years. I couldn't answer that question.
Why didn't you ask someone when you were playing golf for 30 years? Why do you only wear one glove, lads?
That's one of those things. You put a golf glove on and away you go. But you don't have the golf glove on whenever you've got the putter right.
But you could do an experiment and work it out for yourself. You could literally just take a shot, take it off, take another shot, and then you'd go, oh, that's why. That's why, just as you pull the club out of your partner's head or something like that. It's I think, you wear it on the top one or the bottom one? The top one. The top one. Hang on a minute. So I'm just gonna do a bit of golf. Wait there.
If you're right-handed, it'll be on your left hand.
Yeah.
Vicky Berkey.
So then, I've only got a pen. It's too thin. The shaft is too thin. I need something. I need like a broom or something.
James, this doesn't make good radio.
No, I'll be the judge of that, mate. I think you will find that the bottom hand actually. The shaft rotates a bit in the bottom hand in the way that it doesn't in the top hand because of the physics of your two shoulders addressing the ball, one higher, one lower. The lower hand the club needs to move a bit in the lower hand. I think that's the answer.
No,
all right, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not giving myself a round of applause or anything, Marty.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, it would be a bit previous, really. You're on. Okay, why do you only wear one glove when you're playing golf? 0345 6060 973. Amelia Cox is here now with your headlines.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
12:34 is the time. Why do some parts of our body tan more effectively than others? We've done the moths, we've done the page turning. Why does rain fall? Why does rain dooby-dooby-doo? Why does rain fall at different levels of pressure and sort of speed and hittiness? What do you see when you close your eyes? That's not a kind of riddle. It's what is it? What do we all see? What is it that we're seeing when we have sort of shapes moving across what would be our field of vision? When are train drivers allowed to toot their horns whenever they want? What is the horn for? I mean, a fast train going through a platform, going through a station where it's not stopping, for example, you probably would want a bit of a horn, wouldn't you, on your way through there? And why do golfers only wear one glove? Which sounds like the opening to a joke, but isn't. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Andy's in Bromley. Andy, question or answer?
Oh, hello. It's a question.
Carry on.
So it's to do with dreams. So a quick 30-second pity party. So just at the start of lockdown, I was diagnosed with cancer. I'm fine now.
Oh, well done.
It's all behind me.
Good.
Thank you. But it was pretty traumatic, and I was told it was cured, and then I was told it had come back and it spread. And then I had an operation, and I had loads of stuff removed, including the kidney. But I'm fine now. I'm back to work. But
Fantastic.
Since then, thank you. Since then, I've have long, vivid dreams. Now, once you've had that illness, other people I've talked to, it's on your mind all the time. It's going to come back, blah, blah. So when I dream, I've never been ill. And what I want to know is, can we influence our dreams, or what do we do, or what can we do to influence them? If that makes sense, because I must be in. Well, because so if your illness is on your mind 24 hours a day, but hold that thought, because it isn't. Because when I'm dreaming, there's never any mention of it. It's never happened. It's not in my past. It's not in my future. It's not. There's no talk of it. Do you see I'm getting at?
Of course I do. So you're sort of thinking that you are almost like choosing to be cancer-free when you're dreaming. Isn't it more likely that your subconscious goes way, way beyond the diagnosis, and you're drawing?
I don't know. I've tried. I've because literally, you wake up in the morning and think, no, I'm fine. No aches, no pains. You sort of lay down in your bed and you think, well, what's that? Drip off to sleep, and it's nothing. It's just not. It's just not there. It's just not. Whereas I would expect it to be the other way around. That
you would be haunted by it in your dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, now, don't get me wrong. I'm not haunted by it in the daytime. It's
there. It's a conscious thing, and when you're in your dream, you're not. But there's loads of stuff in dreams. Sometimes you're about. Sometimes in my dreams, I'm 11, or my dad's still alive. There's all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah, no, but I tend to find that there'll be something that's happened in the last day or two that you think, oh, that's why that happened. Because I met that person, or I had a conversation. But
subconscious is going to. The answer is going to contain the word subconscious, isn't it?
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
But I don't know what apart from that, Andy, I got nothing.
No. Well, you can't know all the answers.
This is very, very true. I do believe that you can influence your dreams deliberately. I do. Not everyone agrees with me on this, but I'm sure that when I want to go to sleep and have a dream about, playing football, I can do. I certainly could as a kid. But you're on. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know whether we should just say, why does Andy never have cancer in his dreams?
No, it's got to be relevant to other people.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it does, because I'm more interested in that now. Why does Andy never have cancer in his dreams? A psychologist might know the answer to that.
Yeah. Just one more quick question.
What?
So. No, it's not a question. It's a request. So, as I said, I had various bits and pieces removed, including the kidney.
No, you can't. I need it.
Some months back, you gave a ball game to a guy and he'd literally only lost a finger.
That's true.
So, so if I were lucky enough to win it, can you give it to the next NHS person that phones up?
The next nurse or doctor?
Yeah, I don't want it because I listen to your show, I listen to your podcast. If I start playing you at the weekends, my wife's going to get the hump.
Don't forget the books.
And I've got the book as well.
There you go. There it is. There you go. Well, that's a lovely gesture. Yeah. But I'm not. It's not going to influence my decision in any way, shape, or form.
No. Okay.
But if you do come out on top, then I will absolutely do that. What a lovely, thoughtful thing to say. Thank you, Andy. And of course, I mean, the NHS is going to be in the forefront of your thoughts if you've just been through that. 12:39 is the time. Graham is in Edgware. Graham, question or answer?
It's an answer.
Carry on.
Okay, it's the answer to the...
Whoa, what's going on? What are you doing, Graham? What's going on?
I'm in the street.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, right, yeah, it's an answer to the golf question.
Go on.
It's the reason why you wear the golf club, and by the way, it's on the lower hand.
That's what I thought.
It's the one underneath. So if you're right-handed, you wear it on your left hand.
There's Marty in Belfast now is going, that's why I'm so bad at golf.
Yeah. And if you're left-handed, you wear it on your right hand.
Yeah.
So it's the underneath one, and the idea is it's just to help with the grip. Because if you don't wear a golf club, it's very uncomfortable to grip
golf glove.
Exactly. You don't wear the golf glove, rather. If you put your other hand interlocked into the hand which should have the glove on.
Yeah.
If it's without the glove, it's just very uncomfortable to grip it, and you can't hold the club properly. So it's there to help you hold the club and to grip.
And
it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. And you don't. The shaft doesn't move in your hand at all.
No, exactly. Whereas if you don't have the glove, your hands, there's going to be gaps between the fingers and the club shaft, so that will give a bit of wobble.
Yeah, but why would they not wear two gloves then?
Because you don't need one.
Well, yeah, but it would be better to have two.
It's the lower hand.
It's doing the most of it's doing the bulk of the gripping. So your left hand is a little lighter on the.
Exactly. So I'm right-handed. So my right hand, which is the one which is over, you position that to if you want to do a fade or a draw, whatever it is. Yeah, that's the
right hand's under, not over.
Sorry,
the right
hand goes over. It's over.
It's the lower hand, the right hand, for right-handed people.
Sorry. Right. Sorry. Right. When I'm talking lower hand, I always thought you were talking about the one which is underneath the club.
Well, yeah, okay.
So it's lower. It's underneath. It's the underneath.
Yeah,
one.
but it's also the
and
lower.
The right hand is one on top.
Yeah, so the lower hand is the right hand.
Yeah, so lower as in physically lower. It's lower down.
That's the right one.
It's the one that's on top.
And where's the glove now? I've lost the glove now.
The glove will be on the left hand still for a right-handed person.
Right.
So it's sitting underneath the shaft.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It sits underneath the shaft. Yes, it does.
What the? Hang on.
The right-handed player, what you do is you wear your glove on the left hand, you drop the club shaft onto your left hand, which has got the glove, and then you put your right hand over.
Over?
Yeah, over it. Yeah.
It's not. But they're both under it.
No, they're not both over. No.
They are. They're both. Otherwise, how can your both thumbs be pointing down the shaft together?
Because they are. They do. They're one under the other.
Yeah, but
it's like a
the hand. It's under the hand. It's not under the club. They're both under the club, but one hand is under the other hand.
Yes.
Oh, fair. So why didn't you say that, Graham?
So it's like your right hand thumb is over your left hand thumb.
Yes, I know.
Yes,
that's what I said. You chose the wrong words. You chose there's too many unders and overs. It's like the bloody Wombles.
You didn't understand the words I was choosing.
Well, that's your fault. You used all the right words, Graham, but not necessarily in the right
order. Brilliant.
Give him a round of applause. Well played, Graham.
Thank you very much.
Lovely stuff. I got there in the end. 12:43. Imagine if that's the first time you've ever tuned into LBC. Oh, dear. Russ is in Guildford. Russ, question or answer?
It's a answer.
Carry on, Russ.
Why you blow your horn?
Yeah, are you a train driver?
I am a train driver. Yeah.
All right, carry on.
Okay, the reason for the reason why we blow the horn is because there's a massive rule book, and that rule book's been going, I don't know, 150 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So all these things get put in, and so when he's hearing the horn, potentially he's hearing a train coming up to what's known like a foot crossing, so you have to blow your horn then.
Yeah.
And also other times you'll have what's known as the Orange Army. So there's all these sort of engineers, technicians, P-way workers.
Yeah, on the tracks. So you've got to get them out of the way.
Basically, you blow them, and then they acknowledge it, stand aside.
Oh, you'd hope so.
That's why we do it, to keep them protected. Yes, you hope so.
Yes.
And as you say, through the platform at high speed.
I know, are you allowed to do it to delight local children as well?
We do like doing it, but obviously if you live by the line, some people complain, so they don't really like us doing it.
But it's not against any rules or laws?
No.
So you can toot your horn whenever you want, but discretion ensures that you don't toot it too liberally.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, you can toot your horn between 6 in the morning and midnight, but then outside of those times, if you're working and you have a reason to blow your horn, you can blow it as and when you feel necessary.
Okay. Oh, that's a perfect answer, and we already know what your qualifications are. How big is the rule book? Do you all have one in the cab, or do you all have one by the bed at home?
Well, it's great reading at bedtime. It's actually really big.
How big?
It's actually. Well, it breaks down into different sections that's relevant to all of us, like the signallers,
right?
Us.
But there's only one horn. There's not a language of horn.
Oh yeah, there's 2 horns. So you've got a low horn, a higher tone horn, and some trains even have like a depot horn, which is like a little whistle.
But do they convey different messages to others?
Yes, because sometimes you might get a blow. Yeah, so you get one of them, which is a warning maybe to people on the platform to sort of stand back. You might get a low tone horn if you're going over a foot crossing. Yeah, and a high tone. You have loads of high tones.
Yeah.
Say, for example, there's, I don't know, your train's running away or something. It's got a mind of its own.
Yeah.
I don't know, the brakes have gone or something like that, so it's to warn people to get out of the way.
Yeah. Let's hope you never have to do that, Russ.
I hope not.
Oh, so do I, mate. Seriously. Oh, that is a superb, one of my favourite answers. Have a round of applause, Russ.
Thank you.
You live and learn, don't you? So, yeah, and now you come to mention it, actually, if we lived a bit nearer to the bridge where the train used to respond to my daughter's waves, about 1 in 3 maybe it would be. I'd say two out of the bit. Well, I can't even remember. Then I may be a little less charmed by it. It's 12:46.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
12:49 is the time. So things that still need answers. Why do we tan differently in different parts of the body? Why does rain come down at different rates? What do we see when our eyes are closed? And why does Andy never, ever, ever have cancer in his dreams? He thankfully doesn't have cancer outside his dreams anymore, but he thinks about it a lot, and yet when he's unconscious, it's never... well, you get it. Owen's in Cambridge. Owen, question or answer?
Answer, James, but I'm afraid I missed it. It was about the golf glove. I listened to the chap talking to
Steward's inquiry, because someone's just pointed out, I didn't ask Graham what his qualifications were, so I may have missed a trick there, Owen. Are you challenging his answer?
Oh, I'm afraid I am, James.
Gosh, go on then.
Okay, so people wear golf gloves. So at the change of direction, right or left-handed, when they swing the club back, at some point the club gets upside down. That's when it's at its lightest point.
Yeah.
And at the change of direction, it's at its heaviest point.
Yeah.
And what he tries to do, it tries to force the hand open.
Yes.
And succeeds in a lot of beginners. So they get calluses and blisters quite badly.
Right.
So the glove offers them protection against that. And then in good players, it offers adhesion between the grip and the palm.
I think he said the second bit.
That's why golfers wear gloves.
Didn't he say the second bit?
Some people don't wear gloves.
What?
Some people don't wear gloves because they've got used to it, calluses, and they've built up...
so what was Graham wrong about? Because I don't see that...
No idea, James.
No, but how was he wrong? How was he wrong?
He didn't... well, I suppose really the main point is that the change of direction, the club's at its heaviest, and it forces the hands open.
Oh, I see. So the answer is grip, but you're giving us the physics.
Exactly right, because physics is what the golf swing's all about.
Of course it is. Qualifications?
Mm-hmm. Retired golf professional.
Well played. Round of applause for Owen.
Hey, nice one.
You're going to... Very exciting news for you, Owen. My friend Alistair has given me his old set of clubs, and I am, once this bloody book's out of the way, I am taking it up.
Good man. Right or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Good man for you. Good luck with that one.
I could play a bit as a kid. I was actually all right at golf, but, you know...
Well, the question always is, if you were playing tennis, James, what would be a long rally for you across the net? 4 times, 5 times, 6
no, 10, 20, 30. I'm quite good at tennis.
So you'll pick up golf pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think I will. I was all right at it. I tell you, my school was so posh, and it had an 18-hole golf course.
Your house was?
No, my school.
Oh, your school.
My school, so posh, had an 18-hole. Also had one of the best magic mushroom crops in the whole of Yorkshire, apparently, but I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. Oh, my school was so bad, we had prison cells in it.
Round of applause. He's off. He's off.
Through that and got into golf.
Thank you, Owen. Ben's in Shepherd's Bush. Ben, question or answer?
Hi, James. Answer?
Yes, please.
Hi. It's the answer to the colours we see, the lights we see when our eyes are closed. I believe they're called phosphenes.
Phosphenes.
And they are little electrical charges that are generated kind of within the, I think, retina mainly. And the condition is known more broadly as phototopsia.
There you go.
And
so what exactly is a phosphene?
Well,
do you know?
No, this is where my knowledge falls a little bit short. Well, I had cause to look it up recently, and as I was saying to your colleague, I actually see these when my eyes are open as well.
Like floaters? Different from floaters?
Different from floaters. It's more like kind of fizzing, gentle, very gentle, diffuse fireworks display.
Okay. Wow. So you were worried something might be wrong, and you looked it up, and it's rare but normal.
It's rare but normal. Yeah. I mean, I've known I've had this for years with my eye condition, and I actually looked up recently because I've been kind of writing about my eye condition and thought I better try and learn something.
Find out what it is. I think. Yeah. Well, allow me to step in, Ben. I think off the top of my head, I think that phosphenes are like random electrical signals from the neurons in the occipital lobe at the very back of the brain, which is responsible for vision.
I think you could be spot on there, James.
So you can, of course, induce it mechanically by rubbing your eyes, can't you?
You can indeed, yes, and you get quite a vivid firework display then.
That's what a beautiful answer. Qualifications, you've kind of told us, I think.
I have an eye condition from a condition called Stevens-Johnson syndrome. So
researching
basically.
Round of applause for you then.
Thanks, James.
Look at that. Thank you, Ben. Great mystery out today. I'm learning so much. Also, a few of you have picked up on the absolute jamboree of double entendres that have been unfolding on the programme. All entirely deliberate, I can assure you. Andy's in Tunbridge. Andy, question or answer?
Hello, James. It's an answer to your question about rainfall.
Thank you.
So, in my environment agency world, we talk endlessly about event duration and intensity. It's one of the things that kind of literally keeps us up at night sometimes. So the balance of this is held in sort of the thermodynamic properties of, you've mentioned temperature and humidity and pressure.
Yes.
Now, you'll be aware that in the summer you tend to get high-intensity rainfall events. They tend to be because you get a lot of direct heat-in, and heat-in basically makes the air parcels rise quickly, because obviously air becomes less dense when it's warmer, and then it begins to rise. And the more quickly the air rises, the more quick that air mass then becomes unstable. You probably also heard me say on calls up to you in the past that for every 1 degree of temperature increase, and obviously with climate change now being crucial to this, the atmosphere can hold 7% more water vapour.
Okay.
Which is why we're going to see more intense rainfall events as we go through this century.
Okay.
Now, in our winter rainfall, you get a cooler atmosphere. Cooler atmospheres tend to bring more frontal rain, but you get more longer duration rainfall over a period of time where you don't get quite the same intensity, you don't get the same amounts of rainfall in a particular event, and the duration of that event tends to be a lot more extended, sometimes 12 to 24 hours. In the summer, that instability and that quick rising of air brings that downpour activity. That's why actually you get a lot more convective summer thunderstorm activity in the tropics than you do in the temperate regions. It's also the reason why Antarctica is actually what's called a desert. It's a wet desert, but essentially because it's a dry atmosphere, but because obviously we've had a lot of snowfall over centuries and most of it doesn't actually melt.
No.
It just stays there. But actually Antarctica is very dry because it's frozen, and obviously you don't have that humidity that's...
so I think you've covered it. I think you've covered it.
That's the reason.
Yeah, but I love it. Qualifications? Which
I am a Masters in Climate Change. I'm one of your friendly flood warning duty officers.
There we go. I mean, you wouldn't want an unfriendly flood warning duty officer, would you?
Of course not.
You wouldn't trust them. Round of applause. Another round of applause for Andy, please.
Thank you.
And finally, Paul in Stoke. Question or answer, Paul?
Answer.
Carry on.
It's about tanning.
Yeah, you haven't got long. Sheila's here. She's limbering up.
Tanning relies on three things, which is levels of melanin, skin tone, and the thickness of the skin. So some areas will tan quicker, depending on if they are lighter, if they are thinner, like your neck, because it moves a lot. And levels of melanin.
So original skin tone, levels of melanin, which are variable, and thickness of skin. So the legs will go... Why did her tummy tan so quickly then? Because the skin's quite thick. I don't want to be ungallant.
Probably because it's out more.
Pardon?
Probably because it's out more.
But it's not, though, is it? Legs and tummy are going to be out equally on holiday.
You're wearing a bathing suit, and it will be if you're around the pool on the beach.
But it went quickly, though. So with the leg, but if you're wearing a bikini, her tummy's tanning. She's obviously wearing a bikini, and the legs are not tanning as quickly as the tummy. Why would the tummy go? I think because there's thicker skin there. There's the bone is miles away from the tummy. That's not quite relevant, is it? What are your qualifications?
I have primary adrenal insufficiency or Addison's disease, which affects my cortisol, adrenal, and melanin levels.
That'll do. Round of applause for Paul. Who's the winner? I have no idea. Could you pick one? Can anyone else pick one?
I like the guy that got you to stand up and pretend to play golf.
That was Graham. I like that as well. Okay, it's Graham then. Well played, Graham. He sounded quite new to the show. He might not even know what the board game is. He might not. He's just going to... Anyway, all right, you're on. That's it from me. Rewind it all in that business. LBC shows, Mystery Hour, all the biggest podcasts Saying all the right words, but not necessarily in the right order. Rewind Live Radio on Global Player. You can download it for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Sawbrick with you at 4. Sheila Fogarty with you now. 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 Sheila Fogarty with you now.